public access to the meeting by telephone with additional access possibilities by video or other electronic means. We are utilizing the GoToMeeting platform for this electronic meeting. All members of the board have the ability to communicate contemporaneously during this meeting through the GoToMeeting platform, and the public has access to contemporaneously listen and, if necessary, participate in this meeting through dialing the following phone number: 1-646-749-3122, followed by the audio access code 918-242-429, or a video following the directions on the Town of Wolfboro website posted on the homepage under the virtual town meeting login information page. B, providing public notice of the necessary information for accessing the meeting. We previously gave notice to the public of how to access the meeting using GoToMeeting, and instructions are provided on the Town of Wolfboro website at wolfboro.newhampshire.us on the virtual town meeting login information page. C, providing a mechanism for the public to alert the public body during the meeting if there are problems with access. If anybody has a problem accessing the meeting via phone or computer, please immediately call 603-391-8489 or email planningdirector@wolfboro.us. And that phone number is Matt Sullivan, Planning Director's phone number. D, adjourning the meeting if the public is unable to access the meeting. In the event that the public is unable to access the meeting, we will adjourn the meeting and have it rescheduled at that time. Please note that all votes that are taken during this meeting shall be done by roll call vote. E, meeting notes. Members of the board will be unmuted for the entirety of the meeting. Members of the public will be muted for the meeting with the exception of public comment portions or public hearings. I'd like to start the meeting with a roll call attendance. When each member states their presence, also state whether there is anyone in the room with you during this meeting. That's required under the right to. So I'm now going to call the roll. Von Dugan.
Here.
Okay, anyone in the room with you?
Dog who is becoming sentient.
The dog, okay. Mike Hodder. Mike Hodder.
Present, alone.
Thank you. Peter Goodwin.
Present, and my wife is in the room.
Okay, Brad Harriman.
I'm present, and I'm in the room alone right now.
Okay, Susan Replier. So, Susan, you need to unmute yourself. Okay.
Thank you. Present, and I'm alone right now.
Oh, okay, and I'm Kathy Barnard, and I'm alone. Also present, Matt Sullivan, who is the Director of Planning and Development. Matt, are you by yourself?
I am by myself. Madam Chair, if I might just make one comment to the general public, if possible.
Okay, sure.
Kevin, Sal, Bonnie, and Leanne, thank you for joining the call. But I just want to ask members of the public, if you are on the call and you're using your webcam, if you wouldn't mind turning the camera off during the other application presentations, unless you'd like to make a public comment, we'd really appreciate that. And similarly, for those folks who might be on the phone, if you would not mind, please muting your phone unless you're making a public comment or asked to make a specific public comment. I think the board would greatly appreciate that. What we're aiming for here for community TV and the folks watching at home is sort of a Brady Bunch-esque view of the planning board and the applicant and the presentation. So hopefully we can achieve that objective this evening.
Okay. All right. We have a number of public hearings. The procedure will be that I'll read the item into the record. The applicant will then make a presentation, and I'd like to ask the planning board members that during the presentation by the applicant, why don't we let the applicant go through the whole presentation, hold your questions, and then we'll do all the questions once the presentation is complete. I think that will be a little easier for everyone. Once the applicant has made their presentation, Matt Sullivan may make some comments. If there are waivers that need to be granted, we will discuss those and make a motion to grant or not grant the waivers. Once the waivers are granted and an application is considered complete, we have to determine if the application is complete. If it is, again, there'll be another motion and another vote. And all of these votes are going to be roll call votes. And so it's going to take a little longer than it usually does. Once we accept the application is complete, I can then open the public hearing. And if any member of the public wants to comment on the application, you can do that at that time. Once we've taken all the comments, answered everybody's questions, we'll then close the hearing, and generally the planning board will deliberate this evening. So let's get started here. The first application is Abby Brown Trust of 2012 at 10 Burrows Lane, tax map 150-33, case 2020-08. This is a special use permit for construction in the wetlands buffer and setback. A site visit was held at 6:30 this evening. And Matt, did you have a report about the site visit?
Happy to do that. I was at the site at 6:30 p.m. I was joined by one abutter to the property, Mitchell Ganem. We had an excellent conversation. I described the site to him, and he may join the call this evening during the public comment as well. But that was the only individual present in addition to myself.
Okay, and Leanne Hendrickson is also on this evening. She's our recording secretary. I'm sorry, Leanne, I neglected to mention you before. Okay, applicant for 10 Burrows Lane. The applicant.
Yes. Jim Rines from White Mountain Survey and Engineering, and I'm here this evening representing the Abby W. Brown Trust 2012 in their application for a special use permit in accordance with Article 2, Section 175-B as in boy, for lot redevelopment. Before I go any further, can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Yes.
So the property is located at 10 Burrows Lane and is depicted on tax map 150 lot 33. The lot is 1.2 acres in size, and it has 152 feet of water frontage along the shore with a straight line frontage of 151.1 feet. Currently, there is an existing non-conforming 3-bedroom home which violates the side yard setback, the waterfront setback, and the wetland setback. It was developed before those ordinances were in place. It also has a state-approved septic system and an on-site well. Now, what we're proposing is a new 4-bedroom home that will be fully compliant with the zoning setbacks of the side yard and the waterfront, but it will still violate the wetland structure setback and the no-touch buffer, although those impacts will be less than the current existing conditions. And I don't know, Matt, if I want to put the plan up or I'll go through the criteria.
Would the board like the plan up so that I can just have it while Jim reviews the criteria? Would that be helpful to everyone?
I have it here in front of me. I don't really need it.
Yeah,
I think it might be helpful for the public.
yes.
Yes, I
okay.
think it'd be helpful. Yes, please.
Okay, let's give this a shot. Fingers crossed here.
All right.
Oh, look at that.
How about that?
And Jim looks very pleased, which he's just impressed by
He
this
should
technology
be.
here.
This is pretty good.
It worked out great.
Well, I can't see Jim's face right now, but I'm glad he's pleased.
So,
Jim, would you like me to show the proposed plan or the existing plan?
if you shift them over to the side, I think you can get both. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, there you go. Well,
Yeah, that's all right. So in this view that you see here, just for the benefit of the board and the public, the pink areas are areas that violate zoning, the waterfront and the side yard, and the shaded gray that's in the background is the existing structure, and the dark outline is the proposed structure. And you'll see that the current structure is 14.5 feet from the wetland, the corner of the garage or the overhang of the garage. And the brick patio is also about 14 and a half feet from the wetland. And the proposal is that the garage will be, the overhang will be 18.2. And a screened porch will be 21.1 feet away, and the stairs coming out of the home will be about 19 feet. As I said, we are decreasing the total impacts in terms of the structure within both the wetland setback and the wetland buffer. We are adding stormwater mitigation where none presently exists. And we are also putting in a new state-approved septic system that will be, it's over, yes, where Matt is showing now, which is fully compliant with both the town and state requirements. In accordance with Article 175B, in order to qualify for the lot redevelopment within the setback, we have to demonstrate that it has a less detrimental environmental impact on the wetland, and that has been defined by the ordinance as including at least one of the following. Number one, that the development that is down gradient from the jurisdictional wetland. And number two is that the development and or redevelopment within a previously disturbed area, and where the previously disturbed area provides no protection to the wetland. And it is this latter one that we feel we comply with. We are providing stormwater mitigation where none exists. And we are moving it further away from the wetland. So therefore, we believe that we've satisfied this criteria. That is pretty much it in a nutshell. I'd be happy to answer any questions that the board or the public may have.
okay, well, let me just add that the Conservation Commission reviewed this and felt that it was an overall improvement. Okay, Matt Sullivan, did you want to add anything?
Very little to add on this application, Madam Chair. I believe the application is more conforming in several components, not only within the wetlands ordinance, but also in the zoning ordinance as well. So I feel the application does satisfy the criteria of the special use permit provisions. I did just want to ask a clarifying question, not necessarily pertinent to the application this evening, but I did have a question from the gentleman on the site walk about whether there'll be vertical expansion proposed of the structure in the zoning footprint. Again, it's not pertinent to the application, but I just assumed that if that person was on the call, they may be interested in the answer to that question. So So again, it's a question of vertical expansion.
There will be vertical expansion that will be fully compliant. We submitted cross sections, elevations, if you want to put those up, Matt.
I looked for those elevations, Jim. I didn't have them easily accessible, but I just wanted to confirm that in fact the structure is going up. And I did explain that it's subject to the height restrictions, obviously within the zoning district, but I just wanted to confirm that for the record.
Yes, and the other point I'll point out is that it is behind the 50-foot mark, so there's no restrictions other than the zoning requirements for conformance with the height, and we have every intention of doing that.
Okay. Madam Chair, I have no additional comments.
Okay, thank you. Planning board members, questions, comments?
I have a question, and my question is that the position of this new structure is going to be rather precise according to where it's supposed to be and how far the setbacks are and things like that. What are the ways that we're going to make sure that that house is in that explicit place?
We will, as we've done on most of these waterfront properties where they are very tight, we typically, once the structure has been removed, we would physically stake it with grade stakes for excavation. We would then return and pin the footings or stake it for the footings. And once the footings have been poured, we would then come back and put PK nails or magic marker dots on the footings for the foundation company to set up the forms for the foundation.
Thank you.
Okay, go ahead, Mike.
Pardon. Just a couple of comments and then one question. The house, as proposed, is going to be on previously disturbed land, which is a good thing. Not going to be on a separate, undisturbed portion of the parcel. The septic system is going to be new, modern, and efficient, which is better for the lake than what currently exists. The house is going to be outside the shoreline setback, which is also important. The only question I have is the electric department recommended underground utility service. Is there any interest in doing that, Jim?
I'm not sure. The service to the structure may be underground, Mike, but I think some of the discussion was would the applicant be willing to work with them? Right now, they have a power line that's fairly old and it goes down the length of the property. Mm-hmm. It's not easily accessed, and I think that Barry was interested in improving that situation if it was possible.
This is Abby Brown. I have full intentions of putting the electricity underground.
Okay,
good. Thank you, Abby.
Okay, other questions from planning board members?
I just have a comment. I think that this is a poster child for how to do this correctly. They are set back further from the lake. They are out of the side setback. There's infiltration. There's a new septic system. I think they're further from the wetland. I think this is a poster child.
Okay, thank you for that. Okay, I'd entertain a motion to, this application is complete, and I'd entertain a motion to accept the application as complete.
So moved.
Thank you. Motion has been made and seconded. Okay, roll call vote. Von Dugan?
Aye.
Susan?
Aye.
You're accepting the application is complete. Mike Hodder?
Agreed.
Hey, Peter Goodwin?
Yes.
Brad Harriman?
Yes.
And Kathy Barnett, I accept the application is complete. So I can open the public hearing. Is there a member of the public that wanted to comment on this application? Okay.
Yes, I would.
Oh,
Emily Gokegan. I actually grew up, I abut this on the other side on Trigg Shore. I also grew up in that current house, and it is a great improvement, and we're very excited about this and think it's wonderful for the lake. Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Abby.
okay.
That's a
Well, thank
genuine recommendation, isn't it?
thank you. Any other member of the public want to comment? Oh, okay, then I think we've heard all the public comments. Matt, do you have some conditions for us to consider?
Yes, I'd be happy to read a total of 5 recommended conditions for the application. Condition number 1 is the incorporation of the plan set as proposed for the project. That includes 2 plans, one being the special use permit application plan and notes, and the other being the special use permit application plan, which is the lot plan. Number 2 is the incorporation of all of the documentation submitted in the application package as the approval given by the planning board, should that be done. Third is the applicant shall be responsible for the recording fees, and specifically in this case, that applies to the recording fee for the notice of decision that gets recorded at the Carroll County Registry of Deeds. Conditions to be met prior to building permit approval or construction activity. The town shall conduct an inspection of all siltation devices and erosion control devices prior to construction, and the applicant shall comply with the pre-construction siltation and erosion control measures as shown on the plan in addition to the construction sequence. And then condition number 5, also to be met prior to building permit approval or construction activity. The applicant shall be required to monument the edge of the wetlands in compliance with the wetlands boundary monumentation section of the ordinance. And before I finish, I just want to ask again the public, if you are on the phone or on the computer, please do mute when you're not speaking. We also would ask that any folks that have their webcams on, if you wouldn't mind turning off of your camera just until you actually want to make a public comment. And that's really in the interest of how the broadcast looks on community TV. We'd ask that you just turn your camera off if you wouldn't mind until you speak. Thank you.
Okay, planning board members, any questions or added conditions? Then I'm going to close the public hearing, and it's already been stated for the record that the criteria have been satisfied for this application. Conservation Commission feels that this is an overall improvement, so I'd entertain a motion on the application.
I move to approve case number 2020-13 at 10 Burrows Lane, that planning board approves this rebuild and special use permit to go close to the wetlands.
Okay, thank you. Motion has been made and seconded. Roll call vote. Vaughn Dugan.
Aye.
Susan Replier.
Aye.
Mike Hodder.
Aye.
Peter Goodwin.
Aye.
Brad Harriman.
Yes.
Okay, and Kathy Barnett, I vote in favor of the application. So the application has been approved, and a very, very good application has been stated. So thank you very much, folks.
Thank you.
We'll go on to the next application. I need to step down from the application for Huggins Hospital. I'm on the Board of Trustees. So I'm going to turn this over to Mike Hodder, and I'm going to mute myself and block my camera. Is that correct?
That is correct. Returning to the audience. Member of the public on this one. Jim, we have a reduced board. Is that okay with you and with the applicant?
Yes, it is.
All right, I'd ask Matt if you would please read a roll call for the attending members for this application.
I'd be happy to. Mike Hodder, let's start with you. Are you present for the application and sitting?
I appear to be, yes.
Okay, thank you. Peter Goodwin?
I am here.
Okay, thank you. Vaughn Dugan?
Here.
Susan Replier?
Present.
And Brad Harriman?
I am here also.
That represents a 5-member acting board on this.
Right. All right, I'll read the case into the record. This is a site plan review application for Huggins Hospital. The agent is White Mountain Survey and Engineering. Case number 2020-14 at 240 South Main Street. tax map lot 231-090 cap E. There was a TRC meeting on February 5th of 2020, and we're at the public hearing now. I'd like to introduce the applicant's agent, Jim Rhines. And Jim, if you'd like to make your presentation, we'd be happy to hear it. I'd ask all the board members, as before, to hold their questions until Jim has finished the presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, Jim Rhines from White Mountain Survey and Engineering, and I'm here representing Huggins Hospital for site plan review for the creation of some additional parking spaces, a porte cochere, and in an area where some of the 1973 portion of the buildings were going to be removed. And we are also proposing a 16 by 20 foot salt shed that would be used to store salt for the hospital campus only. The lot is located at 240 South Main Street, tax map 231, lot 90. It is 17.55 acres in size and has frontage on South Main Street, on Christian Ridge Road, and on Crescent Lake Avenue. It is zoned residential, village residential, and it is overlain by the ROI district, which was a district that was set up for institutions like the hospital, Brewster Academy, and the like. The access for the property is not going to change as a result of this application. Presently, if you zoom in there a little bit, Matt, presently there, the lighter parts of the parking lot, you can almost see where the sections were being removed. If you go to the right there a little bit, Matt, yeah, just to the left slightly. Yeah, right there, that lighter color, you can sort of see a vertical line where it gets darker more to the left. That's where the 73 wing ended. And then there was another wing that protruded directly sort of 45 toward Christian Ridge Road. As a result of this, we are going to net out an additional 42 parking spaces. We have also put in some traffic islands that also serve as some detention and holding water volume. We are also proposing some trees so that we comply with the landscape section of the ordinance. And we are proposing some LED dark sky compliant pole mounted lights that will be consistent with the rest of the campus that has been done over the last few years. And those have been highlighted as Matt is pointing to right now. I don't know, do you want me to stick right in this area before going over to the salt shed area? Okay.
You suit yourself, Jim, as you please.
Okay, so this area, the drainage for the hospital when it was expanded back in 2008 was permitted. It received an alteration of terrain permit from the state regulations. And at the time, they didn't have the treatment components that they do now, but it was fully compliant with the town and state regulations at that time. And with the proposed renovations, we're adding about 4,000 square feet of additional impervious in this area. Not site-wide, but in this area. Site-wide, it ends up being less than a 1/10% of impervious coverage on the site. and as Matt had asked, the site right now is not quite 60% lot coverage, and with this small exchange of impervious area and then new parking, there's only less than 0.1% increase, so it's still below 60%. 70% is allowed as a matter of right in the ROI district. The detention or the small basins that are inside the traffic islands here all are large enough to accept the first flush, the first 1-inch rainstorm in terms of holding the volume. And they are, because of the soil conditions, they are, the larger one is under drained. The other two have slightly raised, all three of them have slightly raised outlets so that the 1-inch storm does not reach the rim and will infiltrate, such as the infiltration rates of the soil will permit. We have submitted the drainage computations to show that as a result of this, we are detaining the volume. There's no increase in volume, and the treatment is what we were able to just get through infiltration in the existing basins that are the proposed basins that we have. I'll get to the salt shed area in a second. We have proposed erosion control for the site, and
Jim, could I just ask you to explain the underground system quickly?
Yes. Yeah. So there is in the corner there where Matt just had the small hand waving around on it, there is an underground detention area to help detain the rate of flow so that it doesn't, so that the volume or the peak runoff rate is not exceeded in the post-development condition when compared to the pre-development condition. There's no proposed change for utilities, and there's no proposed change for waste disposal or signage. Matt, if you wanted to go over to the salt storage area, which is in that, is the upper shaded one there. So this is there is another plan, Matt, that blows this area up, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Jim, let me locate that real quick. I'm going to stop sharing my screen for just a second if you want to start, and I'll find the plan.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
So this is another area on the campus. Presently, Huggins Hospital, they use they salt the parking lot with a brined salt, and the bond breaker product to keep it free of ice, so that they're not spreading sand that goes into the drainage system and ends up adding additional nutrients and maintenance issues. That is kept at the Sugar Hill facility, and they use it at Sugar Hill and for the hospital. Sugar Hill is currently being offered for sale and is in the process of being sold, and so they need a location for the salt storage on site. And so they have proposed this area that is away from the campus proper, though it's still on the property given its size. The salt shed is is 16 feet wide, 20 feet deep. We're proposing a paved access area in 30 feet wide, and there will be pavement in the floor of the salt storage shed. The salt storage shed will be built on concrete frost walls. We have provided an elevation of what that building will look like. We have also proposed the infiltration slash storage basin at the bottom, and that handles any runoff from this development and reduces the volume in all of the storms, the 1, 2, 25, 50, and 100-year storm event. The actual volume is reduced. We have erosion control around it. Unlike the last approval that the town and the AOT had granted, we have submitted, because we trigger the town's ordinance, stormwater management, we have submitted a operation and maintenance manual that describes the frequency of maintaining the BMPs. That occurs at a minimum of once per year, plus anytime there is a storm that precipitates 2.5 inches of rain in a 24-hour period. The BMP operation procedures are that they, if in doing de-icing, they're supposed to maintain a de-icing log as part of these BMPs in the OM manual. They, at the stone berm level spreader, which we show here, in this area, that's to be inspected once annually for the accumulation of any sediments. And it is also any sediments that are collected are to be removed when they exceed 25%. It's also supposed to be inspected annually for any erosion within the spreader channel or downslope of the berm. The grass is to be mowed in the channel twice annually to control the growth of woody vegetation and repair any erosion or loss of stone berm material if noted. So those are some of the O&M processes that are in place in this location, and this O&M manual also covers the existing facility for the expansion over by the Port Cochere and the additional parking. Presently, the current system has been functioning as designed because, as I said, since it opened, they've been using the salt instead of sand, or this salt de-icing mixture. And I will tell you that it's put out by a company over in Meredith, and they provide the MSDS sheets associated with it. And they brine. I'll speak to that as well. We're at this location. This will probably receive 3 to 5 deliveries of salt maximum in a year's time. The delivery is made with a truck that be a tractor trailer. It dumps it, and this company from Meredith is on site when it is dumped. A small tractor, Kubota tractor, is there to spread it out about 6 inches to a foot deep, a small portion of it. It is brined with this solution and then pushed directly into the salt shed. Then a little more is spread. It's brined, pushed in, until the load is in there. The entire process takes about 1 hour. And because they want to do it when the weather is favorable, it is only coordinated, and deliveries occur whenever those conditions are allowed or exist. By brining the solution, they can keep it friable down to 5 degrees below zero, and it is much more effective at de-icing, so you need to use less de-icing than if it were not brined, less de-icing material. I think that this shows you, this shows that when they use their brine, their Ice B Gone and their brining, you can see the parking lot in the picture on the right. The grass has not been killed, but on the highway beside it, the grass has been killed. So this product that this company from Meredith uses has been found to be a much more environmentally sensitive in terms of the vegetation. I believe that goes over all of the points of the overview of it. I would be happy to answer questions that the board and or the public may have.
All right, open it up to the board. Does the board have questions for Jim?
So there are 2 wings that are being removed, and there will be a new squarish structure proposed.
Correct. So the porte cochere, Vaughn, is being proposed over what is existing concrete and paved area. But where the structures are being removed, the only thing that's being added is parking and traffic, parking and traffic islands.
So existing conditions, E1. There's a dark gray area, and then there's a dotted gray outline.
Which sheet is that, Vaughn?
It's D1 of 3.
Oh, that's in the drainage.
Yeah.
Do you have that D1 sheet? It might be better if you showed sheet 2 of 6. That would is a better scale. That's one of the ones I rendered.
Okay, Jim, give me one moment here.
Yep.
You speaking to this one, Jim?
No, there's the first one you had up.
Sheet 2, Matt.
Yeah, I'm sorry. It's just I have 2 computers, so it's a little tricky to see, but I think I have it now.
That's okay. If you pan toward the top, so if I could see the top where the porte cochere is, Matt. So the pink area there, Vaughn, that is the porte cochere, and that is over the existing entryway, the rear entryway into the medical arts, and it goes over the parking loop, the travel loop that's there, and it covers a little bit of the parking of the traffic island that exists.
So I was actually asking about on the drainage plan, it looks on the end that's green down there with the new parking. Looks as if there's an old footprint with drainage on the roof, I presume, and a new part of the building. Is that just all done?
Yes. So the buildings are the 2 wings. Maybe you can put that D1 up, Matt.
One moment.
Yep.
Jim, stop me once you see the plan that you'd like to see.
It's going to be almost at the end.
Yeah.
It'll be probably around 10.
That one.
No,
that one.
Right there.
Sure, that's it.
Yep.
Yeah. So if you zoom in a little bit there, so those dashed lines, Vaughn, those are subcatchment areas. So where it says 28 and 29, those are the two wings that are being removed.
So that's my question. So two pieces of the building are going, and then that new square in the joint of those two buildings is being proposed.
No, that exists.
Oh, so you're
It's
just tearing pieces off.
They're just tearing pieces off.
Yes. All right.
Okay. Anyone else?
No
Any
matter
other
how much
questions?
I point at this, you don't see it.
Is that,
I have three questions. One is associated with whether pervious pavement instead of impervious pavement has been considered. The second question I have is, are the people who are going to be dealing with this salt and brine going to be going along with the New Hampshire salt policies, which are in existence? And my third question is this idea that Meredith is providing this brine, and this is going to be a wonderful thing. How does that supply of brine go forward in perpetuity? If the company goes out of business, how are you going to produce the same product and deal with that particular issue?
Okay. So the first question, Peter, was the subsoil conditions are not really conducive to pervious pavement. We did it at the high school, and the cross section to truly have porous pavement function is about 42 inches. And at the high school, the soil conditions were marginally better than they are here at the hospital, but they were still not great. And so that was completely lined so that, and then under drained. So though it's porous pavement, it actually simply flows through the pavement and then still goes through, the system. It ends up detaining and filtering to some minor amount, but so it's for that reason that we considered it, but discounted using porous pavement.
That makes sense.
In terms of the company in Meredith that puts this out, Huggins has been using this process for 10 years, and to my knowledge, virtually all the local contractors use them. I think that they are very successful, and if they do go out of business and aren't sold, I suspect that there is going to be, wherever that void is left, someone will step into it, because it's been a very successful business and product, given that we live in the Lakes region and everybody's concerned about it. And your third, what was your third question? I'm sorry.
It was associated with following along with the New Hampshire policies.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly guess that they could, I understand there may be a class that they could attend, and they would probably be agreeable to that. It is a hospital. This is not like a store or some retail place where if it's lousy weather, people don't have to go. They've got to be here, and they're usually not in their best situation, so they're trying to keep it safe. But I think the answer to your question is, if there's an education process that could go on, I'm sure that the hospital would be willing to look at it and live up to it to the best that they can, while keeping in mind that the population they're serving is a little bit different than the general public.
It probably is associated with the people who are doing the application rather than the hospital itself.
Right, I understand. When I say the hospital, I guess I mean their employees, because this is not contracted out. This is done by hospital employees.
Other board members? Brad, you had a question?
I'll just weigh in a little bit on what Jim just said and on Peter's question regarding training. UNH Technology Transfer Center does offer a training program in the, I think they call it the Green Snow Pro, which is basically for private contractors on the use of salt in parking lots and things like that. It's a course that's very readily available to anybody to take and stuff. So I just want to put that out there for information purposes.
And I think if it's something that's available, then certainly education is never a bad thing.
Other board members? Okay, Jim, seeing none, I have a number of questions. One regarding the drainage and stormwater management plans for the parking lot portion of this application. You mentioned that the detention basins can handle a 1-inch storm event without overflow, but can they handle a 2-inch storm event? Can they handle anything higher than a 1-inch storm event without overflow or not?
So the drainage system as designed handles all of the storm events. I was speaking to the 1-inch storm because that's typically looked at as the treatment storm. And I recognize that there's concern about water quality given proximity of the property to Crescent Lake. So the design, the underground detention basin, and the entire drainage system has been sized to accommodate the storm events in the zoning regulations, Mike.
Okay, the water that's retained in these detention basins and in your stormwater management system, does it stay there forever? Does it eventually percolate out towards the lake?
Yes, it is simply a reduction in the rate of flow. All of these ultimately will, in between storms, will drain out. The idea is to keep the rate the same as the existing condition.
Have you had a chance to look at the tie bond recommendations for conceptual stormwater BMP designs for the Huggins Hospital lot, specifically to protect Crescent Lake from the migration of salt, petroleum products, and other waste materials through the parking lot into Crescent Lake? And if Huggins Hospital has had a chance to look at them, have they got any comments regarding perhaps introducing some of these mitigation measures?
We haven't had a chance to digest them, but Matt was good enough to provide them to me this morning, and I forwarded them to Huggins. I then had my staff look through them, and some of the comments for the areas that they were targeting, such as the existing traffic islands, they are not going to handle a great deal. The tie-in bond identified some potential areas, but there is a 18-inch to 24-inch side slope of these traffic islands that exist where they showed them on their diagram. And so to create a bioretention area in those will be a challenge, and they're going to be minimally effective in our opinion. But I haven't digested them any more than that, Mike, because we just got them this morning.
Leads me to the next question. I beg your pardon?
I have Don Pushor from Huggins is on with me, and I think that the hospital, since we were just made aware of them, I think that to go to a big expense, if they're going to be minimally effective, there might be other options that we could consider in the future that would be more effective in the cost benefit. This is also, Huggins isn't the only thing that drains down here. The town has a substantial drainage way that comes down through Christian Ridge Road, picks up a lot of runoff from 28 that discharges at this same location. And so we're, as we did when we did the 2008 improvements, I think Huggins expressed a willingness to work with the town on any improvements that they wanted to do at that time. And that was even written into an easement, a wetlands easement agreement between Huggins Hospital that Huggins put on this property and reserved the right for both Huggins and the town to do improvements in this area if it could improve water quality.
Could you address the salt shed in more detail, specifically its construction and then the process of brining that you briefly described?
Sure. So the construction is that it's going to be on 4-foot frost walls, concrete frost walls will extend up above the ground, and then the superstructure will be over it. The floor of it will be paved rather than concrete because salt doesn't do well with concrete, and the entire access into it will be paved. As far as the brining process, a delivery is made and dumped on the pavement with the briner there and a tractor, and they take a portion of that right in front of the salt shed. They spread it out to 6 inches to a foot deep, brine that small portion, push it into the shed. Then they spread out some more, brine it again, push it into the shed, and they do that repeatedly until the entire product is inside the shed.
Could you define what you mean by brining, Jim?
Yeah, the truck shows up and they have the brine product in a container on their vehicle, and with a sprayer and a sprayer nozzle, they will wet the product, and then by pushing it, you're mixing the wet product with the salt as it's being pushed in.
Are there retention areas?
The entire process. Whoops, I'm sorry.
I beg your pardon. I didn't mean to interrupt. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, and the entire process to brine an entire load and get it into the shed takes about an hour.
Have you seen the material data sheet on this material? Because we have not.
Yes, I have.
What is it?
I can submit it. I downloaded it this afternoon. I can submit that to the town.
What is it composed of?
So the MSDS says that it has magnesium chloride and distillers 50 to 60%, distillers condensed solubles 40 to 50%. It has no flammability, has no flash point, reactive data on it is it's chemically stable. Hazardous decomposition products, there are none. In terms of health hazards, it has the health hazards of acute exposure to the material. It has very low toxicity and LD50 oral rate. Some of this is meaningless to me, maybe means something to you, is 8,100 milligrams per kilogram.
That's okay, Jim. I don't think we need to go any further on the details on that. Are there retention barriers on the floor where the stuff is spread and brined to stop it from flowing outside of the area of the shed area? So
it's done right on the parking parking lot right in front of the shed.
Right.
It's not, so it's sprayed. It's not like it's being soaked and there's tremendous runoff from it. It occurs right there. It's minimally wet to keep it so that you're not creating runoff, and then pushed in. There isn't any berms, if you will, to keep it from running off, because then it would prevent stormwater from running off ultimately. But it is all directed to the infiltration and level lip spreader at the bottom, which contains all of the flow up to a 100-year storm event.
To build on what Peter suggested, have any of the operators of this process received state training on the use of de-icing materials, the safer use of de-icing materials?
I can't speak for the company that comes and does it, other than I suspect they will, and I can find that out.
I mean, the operators from Huggins. I'm not interested in the people from Meredith. They presumably
Yes.
have been trained.
Yeah, so the Huggins people, again, it's one contractor, one employee who does this. I don't know that he has, and perhaps Dawn may know and could speak to that, but if not, that is something that could happen. The way that it is, once it's in the shed, the way that it's used is, if there is a storm event that requires it, he has a 1-ton pickup truck with a spreader in the back of it, and there's a Kubota tractor that's on site, and it just loads it into the truck, and then the truck goes out and spreads it. But if training hasn't occurred, if the training that Brad mentioned is something that could occur.
I think it might be made a condition of approval if this application got that far in the process. Has Huggins come up with any best management plan for the use of this material?
We have provided our O&M manual, which is a requirement of the drainage comps, and in that, something that isn't done now that we're proposing is keeping a log of the quantities of de-icing and how that's being spread, so that they can gain a better understanding of how much is being applied, and the purpose of the brinding is to minimize the amount that needs to be used. It makes it much more effective.
Is Huggins aware that DES publishes best management practices for the management of de-icing materials, that these are available online, and they are a complete BMP for handling just this sort of material?
They are, as of this morning. I think it was a link that was in one of some of the material that Matt provided, which I forwarded on. I don't know if they were aware of it before, but they are now.
Okay, thank you, Jim. Matt, do board members have any other questions as follow-ups or not?
I have a question. I'm just concerned about the flow of anything coming off of that pile being brined in the pavement area. Did you consider making swales to make certain that it couldn't flow around this catch area?
The grading would be such, Vaughn, that it's directed to that catch area. So we can, we can certainly, the design intent is for it to all go there. We can certainly do something, if the boards would want to see something more specific to enhance the design intent, then we would certainly be amenable to adding that.
I'm just afraid that it could slip by, and it probably wouldn't be that complicated to trench on either side so that it goes into the pond or whatever you're calling this.
Yep. Well, we certainly can create a more of a concentrated flow. We were trying to keep it more of an overland flow, a sheet flow versus concentrated flow. But we could perhaps do some subtle grading that would make it a much wider concentrated, so it'd be sort of a sheet flow that is concentrated toward that.
Yeah. Any other board members? Matt, do you have any comments?
Just a few notes I want to add. I think clearly the drainage issue is going to be discussed by the board before any action is taken this evening. I expect that the public will also want to comment on that matter. Jim, I apologize if I missed this, but did you address the snow storage issue during the presentation? I wasn't sure that I heard that.
He has not said that.
Yeah, so the snow storage in the for the new areas, obviously no snow storage was lost because there were buildings where it is now, and they will be, the snow storage, snow will fall into some of these traffic islands, and then over at the parking area, not the parking area, over at the salt shed area, they'll be plowing the snow just off the pavement, and they're going to have that Kubota tractor there. If there becomes an issue, they can just push it back a little bit more. But all the other snow storage areas that exist and that they've been making use of will continue to exist.
Okay, thanks, Jim. Just a few other minor comments, if I might. Jim, I talked to you quickly about the lighting. You said the features proposed on the parking lot will match, or the fixtures proposed will match the existing features. Is that correct? And those will be dark sky compliant and full cutoff?
That is correct. That is correct. They'll be dark sky compliant, consistent with the existing lights.
And Jim, will the wall pack light that's proposed on the salt shed, will that be compliant with the dark sky ordinance, only because that's a more residential environment on that side?
Yes, it will.
Okay. And then lastly, just for the board's note, obviously I'll review the conditions at a later time, but the applicant has supplied both a salt shed elevation, which is the primary structural element of the proposal, in addition to an estimate for construction costs that I would propose be reviewed by the town engineer in the event that the board takes action this evening. But beyond that, I think the applicant addressed the other outstanding items within my review, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Matt. There are no missing documents. There are no waivers requested. So I can call for a vote on the completeness of this application.
So before you do that,
yes.
Another thing I'm curious about is what do the cutoff ends of the existing wings look like? Because that's also another residential street. It would be nice if they fit.
Jim, would you answer that?
We had elevations. I don't. Let's see. Let me just look.
Jim, I don't think we have elevations for the cutoff wings. That was just the one thing I don't think I had necessarily.
Let me just look. Can you still hear me? I know you can't see me, but
we can see you well.
Oh, you can. I can't see you because I'm looking through my file. I believe that I have some elevations here that I'm. So I apologize here. Matt, is there a way for you to share my screen?
Matt, you're not on. Matt, you're muted.
Yeah, no, I understand. I sent the presenter view to Jim. So Jim, if you'd like to share your screen, just click the share screen button at the bottom. You're welcome to do that.
Okay. Where is that?
You're all set, Jim. Screen is up.
I am. All right. Let me see if I can move this over so I can continue to go down. Oh, there we go. So so they're going to brick it off, Vaughn, if you can see this, and that will be one elevation where this is the existing elevation, this is where it's cut off, and this is what the brickwork is going to look like there. Just see if I have. I apologize, not real adept at all of this yet. Dawn, I don't know if you can speak to to make sure I've got the right spot, but I don't know if there's going to be any windows that.
Yeah, Jim, you've got the right spot. The elevation that you're looking at, the elevation.
Would you mind identifying yourself, please?
Or Don Pusher, VP of Facility and Support Services, Huggins Hospital.
Thank you.
The end that you are looking at here is the same as the end that was previously there. This is the one that is kitty-cornered that faces South Main and Christian Ridge. It was a brick face. The detail that you see above is an architectural reveal for the brick. The brick is the same type of brick that was matched to the existing brick that's there. The elevation on the other side, where the other wing was done, is similar, except there is no door access to it. But it will have the same type of architectural brick reveal at the top.
So the wall that has just a door and no windows faces which?
That faces, it's kitty-cornered facing towards South Main, and the way to reference that is that it is going to be to the right of the MRI trail. That's the one you see there, and that's essentially what was there prior to that.
Is that okay, Vaughn?
Well, it's hard for me to tell really what I'm looking at. I mean, if it's facing the public way, it's it's too bad that there aren't windows.
Yeah.
Well, unfortunately, the windows would have gone into a void space.
Yeah.
And it is duplicating what was previously there.
Okay. Vaughn?
Yeah, it's a little hard to say what this is representing, and and of course it probably has to meet the criteria for the standards.
And Jim is showing the other elevation, which is, if you were to reference where the entrance was to the town office when it was there, that would be that end. That would be that wing. That's the end of that. And this wall, the end of this particular wing ends up getting bricked up all the way up with that architectural brick reveal at the top.
Vaughn?
Well, so the standards, I don't have the architectural standards, and it's too bad we don't have a way to review them before we see it.
Agreed.
The proposed development it's the exact same character as the existing building, which in my opinion the standards provide for. So I'm not really clear.
Well,
Are you
there's a
referring to
door.
the window type and door?
Well, the lack of any windows and doors, and that I think there is a door in that end now. I've been going in there when the town offices were in there.
Those buildings, those wings have been demolished, and they are putting those walls up right now.
Yeah, I think there's something that's a little unclear with this application. A raised permit has already been granted for Huggins Hospital. That is not subject to site plan review by the board. That was granted months ago. So the demolition has already taken place, and the building is already in process to seal those two walls. I do think it's subject to site plan review by the planning board, but I just want to make it clear that action has already taken place, at least that small piece, which is not even part of this application.
Right.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, and I know I'm sorry, that was a little confusing. It just was an element I should have made more clear.
All right, board members, do I hear a motion to accept this application as complete? With resounding silence. Can everybody hear me?
So moved, Peter Goodwin.
And I'll second that. May I have a roll call vote in favor of accepting the application as complete? I'll read the names. Von Dugan,
Accepted as complete.
Peter Goodwin,
Yes.
Brad Harriman,
Yes.
Mike Hodder, yes. Susan Replier, yes. So the application has been accepted as complete. Does the board have any further questions or any other matters they want to discuss before I open the public hearing? I would just like you all to think.
Screen.
I beg your pardon?
I was just asking Matt if he wanted to unshare my screen so that.
Yeah.
Yes, Jim. I'll take care of that in just a second. Yep.
Okay. I have a problem with the salt shed portion of this application. I think it's unfortunate that it was bundled together with the other two pieces of the application. I am not satisfied that the salt shed and the way it's going to be used and the materials to be used will not eventually cause a problem in the lake. This is very sharp, steep slope from the back of that salt shed down to Crescent Avenue and then on into the lake. And I'm suggesting once the public hearing is done, that we include conditions for best management practice and Green Snow Pro operator training and certification. I'd just like you all to think about that, perhaps. I'd like now to open the public hearing. Are there any members of the public who would like to comment on this application? I would ask you, those who do, to please identify yourself before you speak, to address only the matter at hand, and to keep your comments to the point, and don't duplicate the comments of others. Any members of the public who wish to speak? Yes, sir. The lower left, I don't have an identification for you, so I don't know your name.
I think that might be me.
Yes,
My name is, thank you, Michael. My name is Steve Defasay. I own the home directly adjacent to the hospital on Christian Ridge Road, 32 Christian Ridge Road. The hospital, as you know, owns a wetland between the parking lot and the lake, and that wetland is directly next to my waterfront home on Crescent Lake. I first like to mention that I'm a practicing physician, greatly value Huggins Hospital as a neighbor and a community resource, and have had family members receive excellent care there. and really grateful for that opportunity. I've owned the house for about 16 years. A number of years ago when Huggins expanded, I participated in a similar meeting, and my really only concern was, is there going to be increased water flowing as the impervious surfaces were paved from the hospital property onto my lot and of course into the lake? And I was told no, that the water mitigation system would actually reduce the amount of water flowing from the hospital property onto my lot due to these underground cisterns, some of which we heard about tonight. I would just like to say that, I bought that and, didn't object to it. And after the construction, there was an enormous increase in the amount of water flowing from the hospital onto my lot and onto the wetland lot next to my house. That caused 3 large old pine trees on my lot on the water to die and had to be cut down. I've got a large maple tree between my house and the lake, which immediately started dying. Now it's about half dead, and large branches continue to fall off it to this day. I'm not sure how long it's going to survive. And the hospital wetland, although clearly a statutory wetland before the expansion project, was full of trees, wetland trees, and very often was dry, and you could walk between the trees. Since the hospital expansion project, that wetland has become substantially wetter. Many of those trees are dead, others are dying, and there's standing water in that lot frequently now, which there never was before the construction project. And in fact, now there are cattails growing on that lot, which certainly weren't there before the construction project. Not sure if this is because the water mitigation system was inadequate or it failed, but there was a trench with gravel. I'm not even sure it's still there, but it was originally, I think, designed to run the water to a holding pond on the property lot, but the water wouldn't travel that way. It just sort of dumped onto my lot and onto the wetland and subsequently into the lake. Well, my concern, I certainly share your concern, Michael, about the safety of the water quality vis-a-vis the salt. I'm not an expert on that and won't speak to it, but sort of the old saying, fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me. Now the hospital's asking for more impervious surfaces. When the last time they asked for it, they said it wouldn't dump excess water on my lot in the wetland. Clearly it did. And looking at the dying trees would, prove beyond a doubt that that's the case. So I'm, really concerned about the extra 4,000 square feet of paved surfaces being requested, particularly because they are on the portion of the property which is near my property in that wetland. And I just ask that, if there are other options that can be considered, that they be considered. Thank you for your attention and time.
Okay, thank you. Any other members of the public wish to comment on this application?
Rich Massey, 74 Moose Point Road in Wolfboro. I was asked by the Wentworth Watershed Association to offer some comments on the proposal tonight. And I'm doing that not as some sort of environmental expert, but because of my work on the steering committee for the Wentworth Watershed management plan for the past 10 years. The site that the last speaker just identified was an area of concern very early on in the watershed management plan. It was identified by the environmental engineers who worked on that first plan as an area that needed attention. As part of that first plan, what was then the Wentworth Watershed Foundation conducted a conductivity survey of the shorelines of Lake Wentworth and Crescent Lake. The idea was to identify any possible seepage from septic systems into the lake. So a conductivity meter was towed around the shorelines of both lakes. As it turned out, there were no septic systems hotspots that were identified. There were a few tributaries that were found to be obviously bringing some contaminants into the lake. The only other spot that registered with any noticeable difference from the rest of the shorelines was the area immediately behind the hospital along the shoreline where the wet area just described is. It registered quite high compared to the rest of the shorelines. As a result of that, for phase 2 of the watershed management plan, there was an initial plan put together, and I believe board members should have received that. I think Matt would have passed it on to you. That identified some of the problems that could be addressed back there, some of the changes that needed to be made. I think you saw, I believe one of the other things you probably were given were Jack O'Connell's notes with regard to our visit to that area. And what it indicates is that the area down there, whatever the intention was in terms of dealing with stormwater, it appeared to be failing. I don't know if it never was done properly or if it had since deteriorated for lack of maintenance. The one thing that sticks with me from that time period is a comment that Dave Ford made after he had looked at the site. And what he said was, it looked as if the crew that was doing the installation of the stormwater mitigation stuff down there had gone to lunch and never come back. That was the condition of the stormwater mitigation structures that we found down there. My point in bringing this to the attention of the board is to ask whether this maybe needs to be addressed as part of whatever action there is on tonight's proposal. I heard Mr. Ryan say that the materials had come in late, and he's right, and they had been brought to the attention of hospital personnel, and that they hadn't had time to look at it, and I appreciate that. However, what I would want to say is that the problems that exist down there haven't just developed. They've been around for a while. And if the hospital is given a pass on dealing with them, the question I would have would be, what incentive is there, having received approval for the project tonight, what incentive is there in the future for the hospital to take a look at this area and finally begin to deal with the issues that we found with the survey, with the on-the-ground visit, and with the issues that the previous speaker addressed. So what I'm hoping is that the board will broaden its view a little bit in dealing with this project. I would expect that any time a landowner comes to the board for site plan review, if the board is aware that there are issues quite apart from the project at hand that demand some attention, the board would not be inclined to simply ignore them. And I guess that's what I would ask with regard to the issues that we've discussed here. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Rich. Other members of the public wishing to speak to this issue? Hearing none. Okay. Matt, did we receive any communications by email or by mail that have not been addressed?
The only communications I received were forwarded to the board this morning for their review.
Okay, so we have all of those, and those will be made part of the record of this evening's proceedings?
That's correct, and they've been inserted into the appropriate case files.
Okay. Then I'm going to close the public hearing and request the board's pleasure. What do we want to do on this application?
Mr. Chairman, may I
Yes.
just get a chance to rebut
Sure.
or add to
Sure.
before you close the public hearing? I appreciate
I'll reopen, if you want, I will reopen the public hearing to allow you to speak.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I simply wanted to respond to the comments by Mr. DeFase and to Rich Massey. Clearly Steve is living down there, so he knows what he's seeing. But I think I recall at the TRC, and Matt, you could comment on this as well, that Dave Ford noted that the town added quite a bit of drainage down here as a result of the Route 28 improvements, the recent improvements there and at the library. And he identified this as a problem area that wasn't just the hospital's problem, but it was something that the town was contributing to. And
I can confirm.
Flawed?
No, I can confirm that Dave Ford did make that comment. That's correct. There's no question that the drainage issue in this area is not the sole responsibility of Huggins Hospital.
Right. So that's one thing I'd point out. The second is that having designed systems for almost 40 years, the storm intensities have increased dramatically in the last decade to 15 years, to the point where the stormwater modeling that was accepted for the 60 or 70 years prior has been the rain intensity charts have been modified, and we no longer use them. And there's an entity in New York that produces and keeps track and modifies them as needed for these increased runoff. So I don't doubt that the wetter conditions are a combination of the hospital project, the town's project, and the storm water intensities. But I can tell you as an engineer that I have designed more home drainage problems in the last 10 years than I did in the 30 years prior. That it is a continuing concern. The last thing is that I just want the board to be mindful of. I think Huggins is, I won't speak for them. Don can speak if he feels he can speak for them, but they're in the community to be a good community member, and as long as they're not identified as the sole problem causer here, they've already expressed in the easement that's been recorded, more than 10 years ago, that they were willing to allow for the town and them to work together for drainage improvements for the betterment of this area. So I just point those things out as you begin your deliberations. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Board members?
I have a concern that the original drainage structures that were, during the hospital, reconfiguration were not put in place properly. And now we're adding more flow to that same area. So I don't know if there were reports then, but it sounds like from, public comment anyway, that the installation wasn't as expected.
I share that concern. And we do have a public comment based upon a site walk showing failed drainage between the hospital parking lot and the lake. And that is a concern of mine. Matt, do you have any comments on that?
No, the only comment I want to answer Vaughn's question, Vaughn, I'm not sure that we do have detailed reports from the consulting engineer at that time. I'm happy to look into that, but I did not supply those for the board's packets tonight, so I apologize, but I can look into that matter.
At least we might have the plans that shows what should be there.
Yeah.
Who was that?
I believe that was just feedback from Brad's computer.
Oh, okay. Any other board members comments on the application?
I'm not sure how we can move forward if there's obvious concerns of drain off that are resulting from what's been done thus far.
Okay. Peter?
I'm going to suggest that water quality is something that the town really needs to pay attention to. And it may end up being that this should be continued to another session so that we can have some of the answers to the questions associated with previous drainage, and perhaps even what percentage is of the issues with drainage come from the hospital as compared to the town. And it may end up being useful then to have that information so we can make a proper decision.
Okay, Brad?
Yeah, a couple comments. First one being, I think I do share a concern also on maybe the previous drainage work that was done there, not knowing the condition of it, I guess, you know, from what was presented to us with testimony. But a couple other comments I will make. I completely agree with Jim Rines in his statements that in the recent, decade or so, these storm events have become much more intense, so that all of the engineers' modeling and all that stuff has drastically changed in today's standards compared to what they were back when this probably this last expansion happened and that drainage system was designed and put in. And combined also with comments were made that it's not just the hospital feeding into it, it's also the town of Wolfboro off of Route 28, the library expansion there. We have some increased flows coming down there. One thing we'll say too is, concerning the salt shed questions and the brine application and stuff. One thing to keep in mind is when this brine is put into the salt, it's not a saturation type liquid that goes into it that's going to have any ability to run off at all. It's going to be basically a wetting of the dry salt that's there to increase its moisture content with the brine solution. Then it gets piled up and stored inside the shed under cover. And when this material is put down in the parking lot, as they stated, the effective rate of it is for the temperature effectiveness drops down to below zero, whereas the regular salt is probably, when you start getting down in the teens below 20 degrees outside, the salt loses a lot of its effectiveness. So it'll take much less salt and solution in here to keep those parking lots clear and safe for the customers and the patients of Huggins Hospital than if they could continue with just a regular salt treatment type process there. So the overall environmental effect will be much less by having this solution put into the salt and applied to the parking lots. It's going to be a benefit to Crescent Lake and the whole environment downstream from the Huggins Hospital. So those are basically my only comments I had there, just to kind of bring everything back together in perspective, I guess.
Okay. Matt, do you have any additional comments or suggestions on this application? We seem to have some concerns about the drainage as originally constructed seeming to fail. At least we have anecdotal evidence to that effect, and we have a number of members of the board who are concerned about the handling of the brining materials and the possibility for off-site leakage and affecting the lake as well. I get the sense that the board would like further information and some more reassurance. Perhaps you can offer some of that.
I'm not sure that I can offer it for the meeting tonight, Mike, though. I think what's required is a more detailed conversation between the town and Huggins Hospital about not only the level of completion of the original project, but also the share of responsibility. And not that the share itself is of any relevance to the application, but how are we actually going to go about fixing a situation that has been created? I'm simply not sure that we can address that as part of tonight's meeting, if that's what the board is looking for. And I think that's a reasonable request. I hesitate to recommend a specific action, but I don't believe that this demands a withdrawal of the application, but I do potentially think that this requires continuance of the application until such time that the town and Huggins can have a more detailed conversation to that effect.
That's exactly what I was heading towards as well. We have unanswered questions here. We have anecdotal evidence that the original stormwater management installation has not worked as it was originally planned, and we have some concerns regarding the salt shed storage and application and the training of the operator, who seems to have no training currently. I would recommend that the board continue this application to a date certain, allowing the applicant and the town to inspect and evaluate previous stormwater management procedures in place to see whether they are effective or whether they need renovation, to come back to the board with the results of that analysis. And I would also like to request that the applicant come back to the board at that point with a better plan for handling the brining on site, the training of the operator using the brine, and some idea of how to keep that brine on site and out of the lake. So that would be where I would be going on this. I'd like to hear how the board feels.
My opinion is
from my point of view,
Go ahead.
from my point of view, I would suggest that I question whether I can really approve this based on the information that I'm giving. I believe that it is probably okay, but I would like to have a firmer grasp of the information so that I can be very sure of saying, yes, they have things under control. Yes, it's going to be just fine.
Vaughn?
My primary concern is just to check that the installation of the drainage system that was approved prior was not only put in place as designed, never mind recent storm events and their magnitude, but as designed and maintained.
Mm-hmm.
I think
Agreed.
we should do that.
Agreed. Susan?
Agreed.
All right, then I would, Jim, comments on at this point? I'd be happy to entertain any comments.
Yes. I'm just trying to get my camera back on. There we go. So I think that obviously if the board needs to be comfortable to move forward. I'm not interested in pressuring you to make a decision tonight that ends up being negative. So we would like to look into that. This is the first we've ever heard that the drainage may not have been installed correctly. I think that my understanding is, and from what I had seen, back when it was being done, that and I wasn't doing the inspections for the town, but it did appear, what I saw of it anyway, had been installed per the design. I know in one of the emails that was distributed tonight, there was no plan for anything more than the level lip spreader that's down there. There was discussion about some treatment basin, but there was never a treatment basin on that lot, that discharge lot. So, but It clearly is something that is worthy of looking at. If the storm events have changed it so that the design is no longer adequate, it was reviewed by a town's third-party engineer in the state of New Hampshire and met all of the standards at the time. So if it was installed correctly per all of the approvals, retrofitting or going back on something that's upstream of what we're dealing with, I'm not going to go as far as calling it as strong as an overreach, but I don't know how you pull that into the application that's before you. But I think that it's not unreasonable to try and confirm that everything that was designed was installed and is in correct operation. As far as we know that the brining, the person who does the brining is trained. We do know that because that's the manufacturer that creates this product. And we've heard, Brad's experience as a public works director, and that it isn't an excessively wet application, as I testified to. It's more of a misting, wetting of it. But I'll try to get more particulars. Maybe there's a video online or something that I can present. But I'll be happy to try and work with the town to gather as much information to make the board as comfortable as they can be to make an informed decision.
My feelings are, board members and applicant, that I don't think it would be wise, and I don't think it's in the town's best interests to approve an extension of the parking area with stormwater management infrastructure, which is going to feed into a prior project, which we have public testimony indicating has failed. I don't think that would be wise for the town. I think the applicant can very easily establish that the prior project has been properly installed and is working correctly. I think that would mitigate a considerable amount of the board's concern regarding adding an additional set of impervious surfaces to an existing project, which is doubtful, at least in the board's mind right now. I think that the salt shed and its application has not been detailed enough in this application to satisfy the board's mind that there is no likelihood of infiltration of this material into Crescent Lake. I think if the applicant can come back and show that he has installed berms to prevent overflow or outflow from the parking area, from the pad where the brining is to occur onto the property, and that the operator will be required to have UNH Green Snow Pro training and New Hampshire state certification thereafter, that would go a long way towards satisfying the board's mind. I do not believe that this board is overreaching. I believe this board is exercising its care and concern for the environment, and I think that which is part of our authority. And I think the application as presented includes too many questions for us to comfortably set aside our concerns. So I'm going to move that this board.
I would make a motion that we continue the hearing with the intent that we get answers to the questions that Mike has just raised.
When would you propose to continue that hearing until? And I just asked for Mr. Rise's availability based on that.
Okay.
Whatever that ultimate date is.
When is that date possible?
And Mike, I'm not sure if you're requesting to continue 2 weeks until the mid-May meeting, or are you requesting to continue until June?
I'd like to hear from Jim.
Yeah, I'm just looking at my calendar to see what, so I am available either the 19th or June 2nd. I don't want to race it, and I don't know with the current COVID situation, I don't know how accessible, meetings with the town, if need be, I want to be, respectful of that. But what is the board's thinking, or
Let's
what's
continue
Matt? What do you
until-
think?
We should continue until June, if that's gives Jim enough time. Matt?
My only thought was to continue until mid-May, and at that time, reevaluate whether adequate progress has been made. And then we could simply continue another 2 weeks into the June meeting, if that's what's necessary.
That's fine with me. The board members?
I would think that is a good plan, because the process should be moving forward as fast as possible.
As fast as possible, presuming that somebody can really go and evaluate the site.
Yep, that's correct.
Yep.
Yeah, and if we find that there's a stumbling block, so that we don't tie up your mid-May meeting, we'll send an email that we haven't been able to answer all the questions.
So that would be May 19th at 7 p.m. And the location will still be GoToMeeting at that time.
All right, I make a motion that this board continue case number 2020-14 to the May 19th board meeting at 7 p.m. on GoToMeeting.
Second.
Seconded by Peter Goodwin. All in favor? May I have a roll call vote? Matt, would you run the roll call vote?
Be happy to. Mike?
Aye.
Vaughn?
Aye.
Peter? I think that's a yes, correct,
Aye.
Peter? Thank you. Brad?
Yes.
And Susan?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
you.
That passes unanimously.
Okay, thank you very much for your time.
And I
Thank you, Jim.
would just like to suggest that I appreciate what Jim is doing, and I just want to have some more answers. And I think he's made a very good presentation, but perhaps doesn't know all the answers at the moment.
Thank you very much.
Okay,
Have a
thank
good
you.
night.
Okay, we're all set to go on to the next application.
Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Okay, all right, Kathy Barnett, back here. Next application, Wolfboro Village Townhouses, Robert Diane 14, 33-7 Endicott Street, tax map 217-119-7. This is case 2020-09. Review for an addition of a deck to units. And this is the public hearing for this item. So is the applicant here?
Yes. Sorry, my name is Anthony Blankenship. I'm the president of the Wolfboro Village Townhouse Association. I'm trying to turn on my camera. Hopefully I will. There we go.
We can see you.
Good evening, members of the Wolfboro Planning Board. My name is Anthony Blankenship. As I stated, I'm the president of the Wolfboro Village Townhouse Association. We're a 7-unit condominium association located down at the end of Endicott Street, 3335 Endicott Street in Wolfboro. Bob and Diane Fortin are the owners of unit number 7, which if you make reference to the plan that's contained in our application packet, you'll see is a freestanding unit in the northwest corner of our parcel. They have approached first our association with a request to add a small deck extension to the exterior of their premises, approximately 8 feet by 22 feet on the sort of south side of the unit. And there, thank you, Matt, for putting that up. You see it highlighted. Our association approved this. That would require, per our declaration and bylaws, a conversion of our common area to a limited common area. We approved their request pursuant to our bylaws, and then went ahead per the direction of the town to have an updated site plan prepared, which was prepared and completed ultimately late last year, which you're seeing in front of you. So again, what Bob and Diane and our association are ultimately asking for is approval of this site plan application to allow the addition of this 8x22 deck area, consistent with Director Sullivan's memo to you dated the 27th of last month. This addition would result in no drainage changes, no access changes to the parcel, no parking changes, no landscaping changes, and no utility or lighting changes. We hope that it's a relatively straightforward application. The deck is to be constructed out of pressure-treated lumber with composite material for the decking. To the extent, again, we don't believe that this is sort of an impervious addition, but certainly crushed stone will be added underneath and around the deck to address any sort of potential runoff issues. So I hope with that it's fairly straightforward. Certainly can answer any questions that you may have.
Okay, all right. Thank you. Board members, questions?
So I would just be curious about the pervious area balance increase in percentage allowed because decks are impervious.
Yes, Vaughn, this parcel is actually in the C1 Central Business District. So the impervious limitation, it's in the urban exempt zone, and the impervious limitation is actually 100%.
Okay.
Yeah, it's right on the edge of that zone, but it is in the shorefront exempt zone.
Other questions?
No questions here, Madam Chairman.
Okay, no waivers were requested, and all the application is complete. Somebody make a motion to accept this application as complete.
So moved.
Thank you. Motion has been made. How about a second?
Seconded.
And seconded, and I'll do a roll call vote. All in favor of the application, Von Dugan?
Aye.
Susan Replier?
Aye.
Mike Hodder?
Aye.
Peter Goodwin?
Yes.
Brad Harriman?
Yes.
Okay, and I will vote in favor. That's accepting the application is complete. I'll open the public hearing. Any member of the public want to comment on this deck addition? Okay, I don't see anyone coming forward. Matt, do you have some conditions?
Three very simple conditions. Condition number one, incorporation of the condominium site plan dated December 12th, 2019, as presented to the board. That will be incorporated as part of the decision. Obviously, the applicant shall be responsible for any applicable recording fees associated with the site plan review application. And naturally, all the documentation submitted within the application package is incorporated as part of the approval. Relatively standard conditions for this type of application.
Okay, any questions about the conditions? Okay, then I'd make a motion to approve this application.
So moved.
Okay, and the motion has been made and seconded to approve the application. I'll do a roll call vote again. Von Dugan?
Aye.
Susan Replier?
Aye.
Mike Hodder?
Aye.
Peter Goodwin?
Yes.
Brad Harriman?
Yes.
And Kathy Barnard votes in favor of the application. The applicant, thank you very much. That was very well done and very speedy.
Thank you all very much. It's appreciated.
And I need to mention that we will not be dealing with the Lakes Region Model Railroad Museum this evening. But the next application, I need to recuse myself. I'm a board member for the Eastern Lakes Region Housing Coalition. So I'll turn this over to Mike Hodder. Thank you.
Brad?
Yes, Mike, I'd also like to, this is Brad Harriman speaking, I'd like to recuse myself as being an abutter to this project.
Okay. And In that case, I'd like to appoint Selectman's Representative Alternate Paul O'Brien to sit in Brad's place. Okay, and now I would like Matt, if you would, since we have a reduced board, to read the roll call of the sitting members on this case. Matt, did you do a roll call? Turn your microphone on.
Thank you very much. Mike Hodder.
Here.
Von Dugan.
Here.
Thank you. Peter Goodwin.
Here.
Susan Replier.
Here.
And Paul O'Brien.
I'm here. Thank you.
Right.
Excellent.
Good. Thank you. This is consideration for a boundary line adjustment review, Harriman Hill, Eastern Lakes Region Housing Coalition. I beg your pardon. This is case number 2020-11, tax map number 176-020-001. Met at the TRC in November of last year and February of this. And the presenter is, and who is it presenting this application?
Kevin Leonard is presenting this application on behalf of the Coalition Lakes Region Community Developers. And Mr. Hodder, I just want to make sure he's comfortable proceeding.
Are you comfortable with proceeding with this reduced board number?
Yes.
All right, very good. Then I'd be happy to take your presentation.
Very good. So my name is Kevin Leonard. I'm an engineer here at North Point Engineering. As Matt mentioned, the property is owned by Eastern Lakes Region Housing Coalition. And the applicant is Lakes Region Community Developers out of Waconia. Sal Stephen Hubbard is the real estate development director for that organization, and she's on the call with us today. Randy Tatro at Norway Plains is the surveyor of record on the original 2010 Harriman Hill development, and he served as the surveyor of record for the work that we're going to be talking about today.
Okay, if you'd like to go ahead and make your presentation.
Sure. Matt, can we pull up the first sheet? Thank you. So
And Kevin, I figured you could use this sheet predominantly because of the way that it demonstrates both land areas.
Sure. Okay. So Harriman Hill was a three-phase affordable housing project done in 2010, and Land Unit C, which is indicated on this plan as a kind of a candy cane shaped open area, was the third phase of development, intended to be single family affordable housing units that were being singles and duplexes. Because we've evaluated the market, it's been determined that it'd be more favorable to have all units being single detached units with one-car garages. And in order to do that, we really need to increase the Land Unit C area. So the next sheet, Matt. Yeah. So in this sheet, you can see the larger area is the dark black line. Increasing the old C is 2.15 acres, and the new Land Unit C is 3.60 acres. This portion of the property is wooded. You'll see a wetland that runs on the eastern side of the property there, from north to south. The white area to the west of that is the 50-foot conservation open space that was conveyed to the Conservation Commission back in, I don't know, probably, it happened after 2010, but quite some time ago. You'll see the hatched area that says 1.08 acres. Yeah, right there. The applicant has approached the Conservation Commission in February and got their blessing to encroach on the conservation easement at 1.0 acres, increasing Land Unit C, and allowing for a new development area to accommodate the detached units, 20 units. We are asking for a waiver to 174-7B3, which basically is requesting that we don't map the wetlands on the entire property. We have mapped the wetland on the western edge of the drainage way shown on this plan. We haven't mapped the eastern edge because it isn't particularly relevant to the development area. And there's wetlands elsewhere on the sort of greater portion of the property to the south, which we aren't working near. Do you have that color up, Matt, handy?
I do.
It just helps. So the brown and green areas are the conservation easement. The green areas are the conservation open space. The brown areas are the limited use open space. And you can see that the dashed red line is the old land use as approved in 2010. The gray areas are the built out phases. Land Unit A is phase 1, and B1 and B2 are phase 2, all built. Those were partnerships between Eastern Lakes and the Lakes Region community developers. And the black Land Unit C shows the new layout with the 20 units all detached with the garages. So this application is looking to modify the dashed red line to the black larger area. Does anybody have any other, questions?
Are you finished with the presentation of this part of the application?
I believe so.
All right, I have one question for you at this point. There's a water line easement across the property?
There is. That shows up on the existing feature survey.
Okay, are you aware of any other easements on this property besides that one?
Just the conservation easement.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Board members, questions?
I have a question about what percentage change in conservation lands is being made. I know the Conservation Commission has approved this, but it just might be interesting to know the percentage change in conservation land.
On sheet 1, the original common area was 30.64 acres. And after the change, the common area is 29.56 acres.
So I think
And Peter, I'm sorry.
Let the applicant finish. Hang on, Vaughn.
So it's a 4% change in open space.
Thank you.
So it seems like there may be some confusion between conservation area and common area. Or they seem to be labeled distinctively and they were colored differently. So
the reason for that distinction, Vaughn, is because the conservation subdivision ordinance under which this was approved, and we'll actually see this again on an application at the end of the meeting, they define those two differently, and hence the reason for the differentiation on the plan. So the conservation easement that was given to the town, in some cases aligns with the conservation open space that's shown on the plan, but not in all cases. So that's why you're seeing the two different types of plan differentiation that are shown here.
Other questions?
I have a question.
Susan.
Can you just clarify why it was deemed necessary that single-family homes are preferable as opposed to a combination of single-family homes and duplexes? Why was that deemed necessary?
Can I make a suggestion, Susan, at this point? Can you hold that question until we come to the subdivision application or perhaps the site plan review application? And sure. Then just for now, let's stick to dealing with the boundary line application, because the nature of the design of the structures doesn't really apply to this application. This is basically a boundary line alteration which if there were not a conservation easement on part of the property would be pretty straightforward. Would that be okay?
Sure.
Okay, thank you. Vaughn, you got a question?
I have one, but I could probably save it for later also.
All right. Paul?
I don't know if this is a save for later as well, Mike, but nice to see you guys. I'm a little rusty at this stuff, but my question as I look at this is, you know, we have this conservation easement, and we did that for a purpose. And this proposal is a pretty substantial, I don't want to use the word encroachment, but what the heck, I'll do it. I don't know what the right word is. What's the public benefit in doing this? Is that maybe for later? Is there maybe that's for a later discussion?
Well, in my opinion, Paul, it would be this, that the easement was granted to the Conservation Commission. They have a concern for the functioning of the easement and the protection of the town's interests. They feel that in this case, granting the encroachment is in the Conservation Commission's interest and therefore is in the town's interest. Ultimately, the Attorney General of the state of New Hampshire is going to decide whether or not this is an appropriate use of the conservation area by signing up on the change in the conservation agreement. So I think that we have to rely on our own Conservation Commission decision for the town that this is an appropriate use of the conservation area. That would be how I would answer that concern.
Okay. Just so I track on you, what you're saying is that the Conservation Commission is saying this is in the best interest of the town to do this. Is that what you're saying?
I think, speaking personally for my own self, that as we go through the next two applications, it will become clear that this may well be in the town's best interest, and it was a good move by the Conservation Commission.
I'll table the question. Maybe I'll bring it back later. Thanks, Mike.
Good.
I appreciate it.
Good. Other board members, questions? All right, we have a request for a waiver to consider. They're requesting a waiver from 174-7D3 of the subdivision regulations to allow them not to have to go and survey the entire piece of property. Do I hear a discussion on that waiver request? I think it's perfectly straightforward myself. I asked the question of the applicant, was he aware of any other easements on? No, that's a matter of public record. We have a good survey of the land on the west side of the the east side of the property, and the west side for that matter. So I think we can safely grant this waiver. How does the board feel?
I think it is not a problem.
Then I would be happy to entertain a motion to grant the waiver from 174-7D3.
So moved.
I'll second that. Any discussion? All in favor? May I have a roll call vote of those in? Matt, would you run the roll call for me?
Be happy to. Mike?
Aye.
Vaughn?
Aye.
Peter?
Yes.
Susan?
Aye.
And Paul?
Aye.
Thank you
Okay,
very much. 5-0.
Thank you. Unanimous. And having dealt with the waiver request, the application can now be considered for its completeness. Do I hear a motion to accept this application as complete?
So moved.
I'll second that. Have a roll call vote in favor.
Absolutely. Mike?
Aye.
Vaughn?
Aye.
Peter?
Yes.
Susan?
Yes.
And Paul?
Yes.
All right, the motion, the application has been accepted as complete. At this point, I'd like to hear any planner comments or review on the application. It's pretty straightforward.
Yes, as you'll see from my review, the application is very straightforward. I'll address any outstanding items as part of the recommended conditions of approval after the public hearing, if that's all okay, Mr. Chairman.
All right, very good. Then I'll open the public hearing on this matter. Members of the public, If you'd like to speak, please identify yourselves and speak to the issue, speak concisely, and don't speak to other matters that other people may have raised already on the same matter. Hearing none, I'll close the public hearing. Does the planner have any conditions on this application should the board decide to approve it?
I do. I'd like to recommend a total of 8 conditions. Condition number 1 being incorporation of the plans as presented in the most updated plan set as part of the approval for this case. Condition 2 being that the applicant shall be responsible for the submission of a Mylar plan for recording at the Carroll County Registry of Deeds, and obviously responsible for all payment of recording fees. The applicant shall submit a certificate of monumentation and an updated plan set with appropriate and necessary professional stamps and signatures. Condition 4, all of the documentation within the application package shall be incorporated as part of the approval. Condition 5, a note shall be added to the plan indicating the waiver granted by the planning board as part of this evening's hearing. Condition 6, a reference to the existing recorded water line easement shall be added to the plan. I actually would like to remove that, leaving us with 7 conditions, so please remove number 6. Condition number 7, a conservation easement amendment shall be prepared by the applicant and reviewed by town council at the applicant's applicant/owner's expense, and obviously that review shall be done favorably. And lastly, condition number 7, the conservation easement amendment shall be submitted for review by the New Hampshire Attorney General's office with town concurrence, review, and submitted for recording with the Carroll County Registry of Deeds with a recorded copy to be provided by the town, or to the town rather. Conditions 1 through 7.
So we're removing condition number 6?
That is correct.
All right, condition number 6 is removed. All right, board members, do I hear a motion to approve this application as presented with the conditions described by the planner?
So moved.
And I'll second that. Matt, would you read the roll of the vote, please?
Be happy to. Mike Hodder.
Aye.
Von Dugan.
Aye.
Peter Goodwin.
Aye.
Susan Repler.
Yes.
And Paul O'Brien.
Aye.
Good, then that application is approved, and we can move on to the next one. And in this case, Kathy Barnard again is recusing herself, as is Brad Harriman. So we have again a reduced board. Does the applicant feel comfortable continuing with the reduced board? The same board that dealt with the preceding application? You turn your microphone on?
You're on mute.
Yes, we're comfortable.
All right, very good. And Matt, would you read the roll call of the sitting members on this application, please?
Absolutely. I have Mike Hodder, Von Dugan, Peter Goodwin, Susan Repler, and Paul O'Brien all appear to be present. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Thank you.
Matt. All right, this is an application for a subdivision review. Again, this is applicant Eastern Lakes Region Housing Coalition, case number 2020-12, tax map 176020-001. This is for a 20-unit lot condominium subdivision in the Village Residential District. The presenter of this application is, again, going to be Kevin?
Yes.
All right, very good, Kevin. If you'd like to make your presentation, board members will confine their questions to the end of the presentation.
Okay. So the purpose of this subdivision is to subdivide the land unit C that we just created as part of the last application. The applicant's goal is to create 20 affordable single-family detached units in a condominium environment. So these are limited common areas for each unit, and then common open space to contain the road and open space and utilities and drainage infrastructure and stuff like that. Matt, maybe you can pull up the individual land unit plan, please.
Be happy to do that. Give me one moment here, Kevin. I'd be happy to help. Yep, of course.
That layout has a mirrored P layout for the road coming off of the existing parking lot to the south there, and looping kind of through the development to a stop sign at the intersection for the roads teeing in. These are single-story homes planned here in a cottage development, trying to be relatively, small units, porches in the front, kind of quaint, and a neighborhood feel. You'll notice that the 50-foot conservation open space remains protected between the land unit C boundary and the boundary of that 50-foot buffer from the original wetland delineation. This application does require the same wetland waiver that was requested in the previous application. And at this time, I guess I'd take questions.
All right, thank you. Question, Susan, would you like to resurrect your question from the preceding application? I think it'd be most appropriate for now.
Sure. My question was if you could clarify the decision to make them all single-family homes as opposed to a mixture of single-family homes and duplexes, and why that was necessary.
I think that probably Sal, the applicant, can speak to that specifically since she commissioned the market analysis.
Sure.
Would
we
you
did a
identify
market.
yourself, please?
I'm sorry. Sal Stephen Hubbard. I'm the Real Estate Development Director for Lakes Region Community Developers. We are developing this site. We did develop the first two phases in partnership with Eastern Lakes Regional Housing Coalition. And in this case, we are developing it directly. We commissioned a market study to kind of determine whether or not the product that we were thinking about would be saleable. And basically what we were told by the guy that did, Bruce Mayberry from Maine, who did the market study, he said a couple of things. One is that that we needed to have garages because we are planning on not doing full basements. And so people have things that they need to store, and not just cars, but kayaks and gas grills and, everything you use in your backyard in the summer. So, when we started looking at adding on garages, we thought about doing duplexes connected at the garage, and then that still would have demanded that we have additional space in land unit C. And really what is preferred by the market is freestanding houses. And so that is sort of how we ended up, was based on the analysis of the market.
Susan?
So that's the reason. That's the reason why they're asking for this, is because of the decision to make it all single-family units, correct?
Well, they're asking for a condominium subdivision approval, whether or not they were single-family or a mix of the single-family and duplex. It would still have been the same kind of ask. They're simply changing the mix that they're going to have from the original approval to now all single-family homes. Your question was why they did that. Their response is that it was to respect the market and what the market wants to see in the way of housing in a subdivision of this sort. My question would be, how does that market decision affect the affordability of the units? Has it made the units that are now single-family homes that used to be duplexes more expensive, therefore less affordable to the market, or not?
I am not exactly sure. I think that probably the price point would be higher as a single family, a standalone unit as opposed to a duplex. But if you can't sell the units, you can't make anything affordable. So
Really, it was a decision in order to be able to sell units to the market of first-time home buyers at an affordable price. We're targeting this to folks at or below, well, between 80 and 120% of area median income, to make sure that it is affordable, and there will be affordability restrictions within the condominium documents. So we will try to maintain that affordability over time. But in order to just actually do the project, we had to be pretty confident we could sell the units.
Oh, yeah, understood. Question for the planner, Matt. In your opinion, does this project as presented, as revised, fall within the requirements of the original approval granted to this project? And
Yes.
Do you have any concerns about the affordability going forward on this project?
I do not have any concerns. I have had a chance to review the condominium documents with council. The only concern that I should mention is that there is a certain level of uncertainty when it comes to maintaining affordability in perpetuity. Although that's what the ordinance demands, we recognize there may be some challenges with that at a point much further in the future or in the future. But I still feel that the application as proposed is compliant with the original special exception that was approved and the original approval and density bonus that was provided within the Affordable Housing Overlay District. I feel this application meets that standard, and therefore I think it's compliant with the zoning ordinance as presented.
You think it will be compliant? How is the applicant and how are the town going to handle the affordability matter going forward? I understand no one can predict the market, but on the other hand, our ordinance requires that sort of prediction. How are we going to handle that discrepancy?
So I think the town's interests are protected through the condominium documents, which at this point we can't obviously predict any amendments, but I think that this approval is pretty clear that it's based on that Affordable Housing Overlay District. So any deviation from affordability would be a condition that could be enforced by the town. Beyond that, I don't know if there's any additional provision or mechanism in place for us to do any enforcement, but I would ask Sal, if you're comfortable commenting on the long-term affordability component and any challenges or issues that you see with that.
Okay, thank you.
So
Sal?
I think, yeah, I had mentioned to Matt a while ago that the biggest issue, I think, for ensuring long-term affordability going forward is in cases of foreclosure. Typically, banks will demand that foreclosure would wipe out affordability restrictions. So even if it's in the deed, that a bank's interest in being able to resell a foreclosed unit would wipe out any affordability restrictions. I think other than that, having deed restrictions, condominium documents, the town's approvals would have flags for any lender and any buyer who was buying in the future. And so that is really the preservation.
I think that's fair. Myself, I think that's fair. Board members, any other questions of the applicant on this part of the application? Overall?
I have a question about the path that is shown on the existing conditions plan and its use. I'm concerned about if there's a connectivity for walking, that is maintained. I
noticed in Dan Kuhn's comments in the discussion regarding altering the conservation easement, he also expressed the same interests on same concerns.
So is that used for walking? And if so, is there a way to accommodate those people going from that one spot to the other spot it leads to?
That's an old woods road, and the majority of it is through the old land unit C, which was intended to be developed with a loop road from from one end of the parking lot all the way around to the other end of the parking lot, tying into phase one. There is a trail on the southern leg of the property that is going to be implemented as part of the discussion with it recently with the Conservation Commission.
So coming
I've never seen anybody walking over that area of the site.
And there is a trail to be constructed according to the approval of the Conservation Commission to amend the conservation easement. You'll find that in your application packet for the preceding application, the document sent to the Attorney General from the Conservation Commission, noting members' concern about the completion of a trail construction, which was called for in the conservation easement deed, and they want that as part of the approval or part of the allowance of the alteration of the conservation easement. So I think that concern might well be taken care of. Any other questions on this portion, or this application, I should say? It's not a portion, it's an application. Hearing none.
I have a question about the actual shape or type of these buildings. Are they all going to be identical, or is there going to be some variety?
You'll see that in the site plan review application that we're going to be dealing with once we have taken care of the condominium subdivision application. There are, in your packet, you'll see drawings of the individual units as proposed. We have a waiver to deal with on this application. It's a waiver as the preceding. It's from 174.7D3 of the subdivision regulations. And we approved the preceding request for a waiver. I think that I would propose that this board could easily approve the waiver for this application also, but I'd throw that open to the board for discussion. Then, all right, hearing none, do I hear a motion to approve the waiver as requested from our regulations 174-7D3?
So moved.
So moved.
Seconded.
Moved by Vaughn, seconded by Peter. All in favor? Can I have a roll call vote? Matthew?
You may. Mike?
Yes.
Vaughn?
Aye.
Peter?
Yes.
Susan?
Yes.
Paul?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Matt, do you have any comments?
I just want to make a few comments, and these are simply for the record because it's customary when we're doing a subdivision with some sort of road infrastructure for us to hold some sort of financial security. As you'll see in my review, I've recommended that security be held as part of the site plan review application, as I feel it's more appropriate there, with this not ultimately becoming a town road. So I just wanted to point that out for the record. The only other item I wanted to mention is that I did have a discussion with Mr. Leonard last week about the addition of appurtenant stairs to each of the decks that are shown on the condo units. We were doing a last-minute review of the packets on Friday, and we recognized that although the board would ultimately be approving the decks to be constructed without further planning board review, I think it would behoove the future owners of the units and also the planning board's workload in the future to approve a set of appurtenant stairs as part of each of these proposed units on the deck only. I am comfortable recommending that, so certainly up to the board in the end, but I'm comfortable recommending that be included as part of the approval. Those would be limited to 1 to 3 stairs in order to access the deck as proposed, and they could be placed at any location along the deck as proposed on the approved site plan. I'm curious if you're willing to add that as a condition of approval.
To this application or to the site plan review application?
I think it'll be on the next one.
The reason I'm recommending it here, though, is because would it not be part of the common area, the limited common area adjustment? And Kevin, I think that is a question for you, but my thought was that it will be included within the unit bound and therefore should be reflected within the condominium documents as well.
It should be reflected in the condominium documents. I think my only question is the units themselves are not shown on this application. So the condominium documents should speak to it. I agree.
Yeah, but Matt is saying, if I understand Matt correctly, he's saying it's irrelevant where you put the stairs adjoining the deck. It's just that you need to have the stairs. So I guess my question is why not just put it here?
Well, that's a question to discuss. Vaughn, you have a comment?
No.
Okay. I'd like to rescind my comment. I agree with Kevin. I do agree with Kevin on this. I think he's correct that this should be part of the site plan review. There's no harm in including it, but I think without the units themselves actually shown on the proposed plan, I think it would be wouldn't be appropriate for this necessarily. I guess the only request that I would add as a condition is that the appurtenant stairs be added as an element within the condominium documents as revised.
So where do you want to put that condition, here or in the site plan review?
I would add that condition here because the condominium documents relate specifically to the subdivision application.
Okay, then if we get that far, would you add that as a condition?
Absolutely.
Give us the language there too?
Absolutely.
All right, very good. Any other comments, Matt?
I have no additional comments. I felt this is a fairly straightforward request for the 20 units.
I think it may well be also. And do I have any further comments from questions or concerns or discussion from the board? All right, then I'm going to open the public hearing. Any members of the public wishing to speak should identify themselves, address only the matter at hand, keep your comments to the point and as brief as you can make them. The hour is getting late.
And Mike, I think I should have made one note at a prior time. The condominium documents are currently under review by town council. We have not gotten them yet? No, we had received them, and we've actually gone through 3 rounds of review between Laura Spector Morgan and myself. We have only 3 remaining outstanding issues that we have not provided to the applicant. None of them are substantive. So I am comfortable recommending a condition of approval that the favorable review of town council be completed. I'm happy to address that at a later time when you ask for the conditions.
That's fine. Any other comments or any comments at all from members of the public? Hearing none, I'm going to close the public hearing. Board members, comments, discussions, concerns? Then I'd be happy to entertain a motion. Actually, planner, if you would like to review the conditions first, and then I'll make a motion for approval.
Happy to do that. Condition number 1 is the incorporation of 5 plans as depicted within the plan and review, including the existing development plan, existing features survey, proposed land unit C adjustment plan, overview plan, and the site layout plan as part of this approval. Condition 2 is that the applicant shall provide documentation that the association has been created and is in place. Condition 3, the applicant shall revise the site layout plan and overview plan to include the stamp and signature of a licensed land surveyor so that when as-built are required, they can be provided in accordance with that. The applicant shall submit a recorded copy of all condominium documents to the town. And other necessary legal documentation by town council at the expense of the applicant. This includes the review of the documentation as well. A note shall be added to the plan indicating any waivers, and in this case, the one waiver granted by the planning board. All the documentation submitted within the application package is incorporated as part of the approval. I would recommend removing condition number 8 shown in my review, as that's comparable to the condition recommended in the boundary line adjustment that has already been completed. Condition number 8, therefore, becomes the applicant shall submit a Mylar plan for recording at the Carroll County Registry of Deeds. Condition number 9, the applicant shall be responsible for the payment of all recording fees. Condition 10, the applicant shall be responsible for monumentation and submission of a certificate of monumentation to the town, including also original plans, stamps, and signatures for that monumentation. And then the addition of a new condition 11 being that the condominium documents shall be amended to reflect the fact or to reflect the ability of unit owners to construct one appurtenant set of stairs for access or egress to the proposed deck as shown on the approved site plan, which will be addressed by the board at a later time.
All right, and will we need to accommodate that additional condition when we come to site plan review as well?
I think it should be addressed within the site plan review discussion as well, yes, because I think that the stairs may not need to be reflected on the 2D plan itself, but I think that a note should be added to the plan allowing those stairs to be constructed.
All right, would the applicant make a note of that as well, please? Okay, well then we have the application with 11 conditions as presented by the planner. I would be happy to make a motion that the board approve this application with the 11 conditions as presented. Do I hear a second to that motion?
Seconded.
Seconded. Can I have a roll call vote of those in favor? Matt?
Absolutely. Mr. Hodder?
Yes.
Ms. Dugan?
Yes.
Mr. Goodwin?
Yes.
Ms. Repplier?
Yes.
And Mr. O'Brien?
Yes.
Good, the vote is unanimous. Thank you all. Now we move on to the third part of this bundled application series, the site plan review. Again, we have Kathy Barnard and Brad Harriman having recused themselves. I will appoint Paul O'Brien to sit on this application in Brad Harriman's place. We have a reduced board size. Would the applicant care to comment on whether he's prepared to continue or not?
Yes, we are.
Okay, very good. Matt, would you call the roll of the sitting members on this application, please?
Yes, I'd be happy to. Mike Hodder, Vaughn Dugan, Peter Goodwin, Susan, and Paul are sitting. I believe that's correct.
Yes.
Okay.
All right, thank you. This is an application for site plan review. The Eastern Lakes Region Housing Coalition, case number 2020-12, tax map 176-020-001. TRC met on this application in November of last year and in February of this. This is for a 20-lot single-family detached dwelling unit condominium site plan. And would the applicant care to present this application, please?
Sure. So the purpose of this application is to seek approval for the layout and infrastructure associated with the 20-unit affordable housing project. I guess I'm going to walk through the set. If Matt would pull up sheet C1, walk through sheet by sheet. Thanks, Matt. So C1 shows the layout, the 22-foot wide road. You see the units 1 through 20, 17 of which are on the perimeter, and 3 are in the island in the middle of the roof load. We've shown a 15-mile-per-hour speed limit on the road with a sign sort of you enter into the development. There'll be a stop sign at the T intersection for the road coming back around. There's Cape Cod berm proposed along the frontage of all units, and the units will be set above road grades so that the runoff will drain from the garage towards the road, and that runoff on the street will run along the gutter line and to the drainage system. Where there isn't units, primarily on the interior of the development, there will be no curb. There'll be a 3-foot gravel shoulder and ditch line. We've shown snow storage in sort of the bulk areas in the island and up at the entrance. There's some open space areas there. We probably would anticipate some level of snow between driveways along the frontage of the whole development, but the units are pretty close to the road, and so we needed some bulk areas to store larger amounts of snow if we get heavy snowfall. There is an existing fire hydrant, basically at the entrance of the development. That's in place today. We're proposing a second fire hydrant, kind of the far outer limits of the development. These are one-story kind of ranch-type structures. You can see the porch drawn on the front. The garages are set back 19 feet from the face of the building. These are the renderings of what those units are going to look like. I think that generally speaking, the architecture is going to be the same from unit to unit, although there will be some mirror imaging that occurs depending on layout, and I suspect that there will be variation in color selections throughout the development. Maybe we can flip to the grading plan, Matt. Thank you. So this shows the grading for the road and all the units. You'll notice in the island there's a ditch that runs kind of along the edge of the road and it drains to the stormwater management basin right there where he's pointing. That basin sort of is the collection point for runoff on most of the development, and then it has an outlet structure that discharges to a level spreader, which discharges or sheet flows from there down to the existing phase 1 pond. That pond was designed to accommodate the original phase 3 land unit C development. Because we've expanded the limits of land unit C as part of this application, we have increased the impervious area, and that sort of justifies the need for the second stormwater management basin shown on this property, on this parcel. Look at the next sheet, maybe the road profile. Coming off the existing pavement at a 5% grade. As you'll see, about midway through the roadway, this comes a high point kind of in the back of the development, and then it loops back around and ties into the existing road. We'll have a connection to the municipal sewer and water system with private lines. We'll have an 8-inch line coming off of the existing water line to the T intersection, and then 6-inch water line running around the loop. And we will have a 2-inch force main common to the development to accept wastewater from each of the units. Let's flip to the next page, utilities plan. Thanks, Matt. This just shows the sewer force main running around the loop. Each unit will have a 1,250 gallon septic tank that will gravity flow from the unit to the tank, and the tank will have a pump in it. This is a step sewer system, so it's a septic tank effluent pump. So each unit will pump their septic tanks of solids and will only be pumping liquids or effluent into the sewer force main system. We'll have municipal water connection with a private sewer water line as shown on this plan, as well as underground utilities. I think we can go to the next sheet. It shows a landscaping for the development, including street trees around the perimeter in the island. We also concentrated on prettying up the area around the stormwater management basin and the entrance of the development, and shown a planting plan for the units themselves. The next sheet, C7, locates 4 light poles to provide some light within the development. These will be LED lights, dark sky compliant, and we're not trying to light up the whole thing to be super bright, but provide some light for walking and that sort of thing. The next sheet shows a erosion control plan showing stone check dams in the ditch lines, silt fence around the perimeter, construction exit during construction at the edge of the existing pavement, and erosion control matting on all steeper slopes greater than 3 to 1. You'll note that we've also identified that with that cross hatching that the 50-foot conservation open space area shall be not impacted by the development. We go to the remaining sheets which are construction details. Pretty comprehensive, roadway, sewer, water, drainage, and such. I can speak to that in more detail if someone has questions. I guess I should point out that we are seeking an NHDS alteration drain permit, and we'll be filing a wastewater connection permit. The 20 units was already approved for the flow generated by those units, but because we are relocating the location of the infrastructure, we need to proceed with an amended permit for wastewater connection. We are seeking the same wetland waiver to only map the western edge of that drainage way from north to south that is east of the development area. The plan is for unit owners to store and take their own trash to the dump or the landfill. So no dumpster is proposed. One thing that has not shown up on the plan and is the intent to have a mail station probably located at the entrance of the development to locate everyone's mailboxes. And that has not been shown on the plan, but that is the intent. I guess at this time I take questions.
Okay, board members, questions for the applicant?
Could you describe any phasing plans? Like what's the build out going to look like here?
So the applicant has received Northern Borders funding for the infrastructure of the roadway. And the goal is to build the roadway loop and the associated infrastructure, utilities and such this summer. And then Sal may be able to speak specifically about phasing of the units themselves.
We plan
Could you
to
identify yourself again, Sal?
Excuse me?
Could you identify yourself again? We're on another application now.
Sal Stephen Hubbard. I am the Real Estate Development Director for Lakes Region Community Developers in Laconia. We are planning to build the first 2 units in the spring, and then pre-sell units and build them as they're sold throughout the next year.
Okay.
So is it you come and pick a lot, or you just do 1, 2, 3, 4 in a row?
My preference is to do 1, 2, 3, 4 in a row. We'll see if that works.
So not really determined.
Correct.
Okay. Other board members, questions on this part of the series of applications? Matt, do you have any comments and concerns regarding this waiver requested?
I just want to make a few notes about the application, but I do believe it is complete and ready for acceptance and potentially approval by the board. But just a few comments, if I could. I do want to note that the water and sewer systems were reviewed by the Public Works Director, in addition to the drainage system. One thing I do want to point out is, as Kevin noted, the application is still subject to New Hampshire AOT permitting through New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services. We are still in conversation about the suggested form, the basin system that's proposed here based on the depth of ledge and whether or not that's the appropriate solution. So we're hoping that the board is comfortable entertaining approval with a condition that the town will work with the applicant and NHDES to determine what the best solution is in the event that a substantial change is necessary, the applicant could potentially have to return to the board for review. But we think that we can accommodate the necessary solution on site, but we do recognize that the final design has not been approved by NHDES, and we'd also like a piece of that review process. I do want to point out as well that the road that is proposed does not meet the town's road regulations. A formal waiver is not required from the planning board. This spec is comfortable for both the public works director, and I think it's comfortable as a context-sensitive solution to the proposed neighborhood or cottage-style development that's being done here. But as a result, what I've recommended is that the board add a note to the plan and a condition to this, that the town would at no point in the future be taken by, or sorry, the road would at no point in the future be taken by the town of Wolfboro. And that would avoid petition by the potential landowners to the town to take a substandard road when that may not be appropriate. Certainly in the future, if the...
Will that also concern the water and the sewer system in this development? Both of those are private currently.
That's correct, and I would attach those as part of the condition as well, Mike, and I actually have a note to that effect on my own papers here that water and sewer would not be accepted by the town. I do want to point out one critical distinction, though, for the record, and that is that in the event that the property owners and the contiguous property owner chose to upgrade the systems to town specification, they would, of course, have the right to petition the town at that time via either the betterment assessment process or through the traditional acceptance process. But because this development is not proposed with those specifications, it's not able to be accepted as it is proposed to the board.
Well, that would be understood. The condition would be not to adopt because it's substandard, but should it be raised to standard, it could then be adopted.
That's correct. That's what I would recommend as a condition.
Mr. Chairman.
Paul? Mr. O'Brien?
Matt, are we okay with, is the fire department okay with that?
Yes, the fire department is comfortable with the access as proposed, actually. They were totally comfortable with this. The only note that they had is there was an issue with the fire hydrant location. That's been corrected by the applicant. They had no concern about the proposed access width, and particularly because this is a looped road, they were supportive of it. One of the other things, though, Paul, and I'm glad you brought that up, one of the things that's a little bit odd about this, what I'm calling an access drive, is that the curves to the road are pretty abrupt at some points, more so than a normal subdivision standard road would be. Dave Ford was comfortable with that. Tom Zotti was comfortable with that, but that is one of the factors that makes it so this would not be acceptable as a town road. But the application is okay as presented.
But it all presupposes that we're going to do a really good job keeping the snow off this albeit narrow road in the first place. So how does that all work in this plan?
Kevin, could you comment on that?
You're concerned about the width of the road is 22 feet. It meets the town standard. The only element of the design that doesn't meet town standard is the roadway turns at the top of the development, which maybe Matt can pull up that plan. We felt that we're trying to seek a cottage development environment. We're coming off an existing parking lot on phase one. And so it really doesn't warrant traditional residential street speeds coming through here. We're coming through a parking lot to access the property, and we're trying to have units that are close together, relatively close to the road, and so it's just those two curves that he's highlighted there that are sharper than normal. You could meet the town road standard by putting stop signs, with an intersection at those locations, but that seemed unnecessary for this type of development, and the intent wasn't trying to achieve a public road, So
I guess let me clarify. I'm not trying to weigh in on the fire department if they're all good with this, but if you have sharp turns where you put your little yellow markers there and you have snow on the road or berms of snow adjoining that road, one of our small little pieces of fire apparatus might have a problem getting around. If Tom Zotti's okay with that, that's fine.
Yeah. I think if you look at the TRC committee report, Paul, you'll see that there are no concerns raised on those specific issues by either fire or public works.
Okie dokie.
Do we have a one-way road standard in our town?
We do not have a one-way road standard for a town road. We do have a one-way access standard, however, for an access drive. Actually, Huggins Hospital has a one-way, but nothing, and it has to be internal to the development. So we do not have a one-way standard for a public road, nor for a private road for that matter.
Okay, are there any other questions from the board on this application at this stage? We have a request for a waiver. This is a waiver from 173-15E4 lowercase m of site plan review regulations for mapping of physical features. This is a less restrictive ordinance than the one that we have already given 2 waivers for. I personally feel that we could give this waiver to the applicant as well. But how does the board feel? Any discussion on this one? Seeing none, I'd be happy to entertain a motion to approve the waiver from 173-15E4 lowercase m. Somebody want to make a motion? I'll move it. Oh, thank you, Vaughn. Moved by Vaughn, seconded by Mike. Have a roll call vote in favor, Matt?
Certainly. Mike?
Yes.
Peter?
Yes.
Vaughn?
Yes.
Susan? I think that was a yes from Susan. I saw her mouth move. Paul?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thanks, Susan.
you. That's unanimous then. All right, very good. Having granted the waiver, I think the application can now be considered as being complete. So I'd be happy to move that forward. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Seconded by Peter Goodwin. Again, Matt, can you have a roll call vote for those in favor of the application being complete?
Certainly. Mike?
Yes.
Vaughn? Susan?
In favor?
Peter?
Yes.
And Paul?
Yes.
Good. Thank you all. All right. Are there any further questions or just matters to be discussed from the board before I open the public hearing? One.
No.
Okay. Then I will open the public hearing. Members of the public, if you want to speak, would you please identify yourselves, speak to the issue, and be as concise as possible? Seeing none, I'm going to close the public hearing. Matt, would you like to review some conditions to this application, should the board decide to approve it?
I would, and I'll try to be as brief as possible with these. The first condition is the incorporation of the plans. In this case, there are 17 plans to be incorporated as part of the approval. I won't detail each of those, but they are reflected in my plan of review. The applicant shall be responsible for the payment of all recording fees at the Carroll County Registry of Deeds. In this case, for the site plan, it would be the site plan review notice of decision, if approved, prior to the signing of the plans. All the documentation submitted in the application package by the applicant and any requirements imposed are obviously part of this approval and incorporated. All final plans shall be stamped by a licensed land surveyor, landscape architect, wetland scientist, and professional engineer as applicable to the needs of each plan. The application is subject to the following state and local permits and all conditions attached thereto, and obviously if anything is modified substantially, it would return to the board. That includes the NHDES AOT, or alteration of terrain permit, the NHDES sewer discharge permit, which Kevin is actively working with the Public Works Department on, and any other required permits from the state or local jurisdictions. Condition 6 is a bit of an odd one, but we did discuss this before. The applicant will be required to prepare a revised water easement in favor of the town of Wolfboro to extend the existing easement for any kind of maintenance responsibility in the case of an extreme emergency. And said easement shall be recorded at the cost of the applicant. The utility plan shall be revised to indicate that the town of Wolfboro sewer connection, not that there is a town of Wolfboro sewer connection, but there's a comment in there that needs to be reflected on or needs to be adjusted on the utility plan. Condition 8, a note shall be added to the plan that the town of Wolfboro shall not accept the proposed access drive at any time unless the road is brought up to town standard. And that also applies to the water and sewer infrastructure that's to be installed on site. And that note shall be added to the plan. Condition 9, reference to the existing recorded water line easement. Comparable to prior applications, I'd like to remove condition number 9.
Yep.
New condition number 9 is road names and E911 addresses shall be assigned at the time of the building permit applications. Condition number 10, the applicant shall add a note to the plan confirming the 50-mile-an-hour speed limit. Kevin, has that already been added to the plan? I believe it has.
Yes.
I'm sorry, that was a late plan addition. Thank you very much. So we can remove the condition number 11.
Mm-hmm.
Condition number 12, as-built site plans for all roadway and utility work must be submitted to the Department of Public Works prior to the release of the applicant's financial security or the signature of the plan, depending upon which form of security the planning board ultimately requests. No construction or site work for the site plan shall be undertaken prior to without a pre-construction meeting with the town and the Public Works Department specifically. And in addition, the town's consulting engineer to be part of this project. And receipt of the copies of the NHDES sewer connection permit and all AOT permits and a financial security must be in place before the town. And again, that all must be in place prior to any site work taking place as part of the project. Condition number 13, installation of all erosion control measures and inspection by the town's consulting engineer shall be completed prior to any construction activities. Condition number 14, the drainage plan and all drainage details should be amended accordingly to reflect any modifications required through the NHDES AOT permitting process. Condition number 15, the applicant shall enter into a construction observation agreement with the town's consulting engineer for site work, and the cost shall be borne by the applicant. Condition number 16, the applicant shall be responsible for the payment of financial security, the amount of which to be reviewed by the town's consulting engineer at the cost of the applicant, or the applicant may enter into development agreement with the planning board in lieu of site security that functionally holds the approval until such time that improvements are completed to the satisfaction of the town. So I'm offering two options there for financial security as part of a recommended condition 16. Condition 17, a note shall be added to the plan that indicates that the unit owners may construct one set of appurtenant stairs to each unit. And those appurtenant stairs shall be no more than 3 steps unless otherwise required by the town of Wolfboro's building official. And that note shall be added to the plan offering that modification. All details provided within the plan set shall be reviewed by the appropriate town departments prior to any construction work taking place. And the last comment that I had here, I'm actually having a bit of a hard time reading my own notes. I think it was something that we had just discussed. Actually, I think I remove that condition. So that condition can go, but those are conditions 1 through 19 as proposed.
All right. Could you
1 through 18? I'm sorry, 1 through 18.
All right, 1 through 18. Could you very briefly discuss the ramifications of condition 16?
And Mike, can you just clarify which condition that is? Because I obviously have made some substantial modifications to my number in here. Is that the condition? I'm sorry.
The security condition.
Sure. So typically the planning board for site work associated with a project of this scope would require that a financial security be in place, whether it be an irrevocable letter of credit or some sort of bonding document. The board has, since I have been here, accepted an alternative, being a development agreement with the applicant that essentially does not provide final approval of the proposed application until such time that all improvements have been completed to the satisfaction of the town. It removes the responsibility of the applicant to post a financial security, but also provides more flexibility in the approval process in that way. It's certainly up to the board. I prefer flexibility to negotiate with the applicant, of course, but that's speaking selfishly as the administrative staff. The board can certainly require whatever it wishes to as part of this.
I have a question related.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
And that is, there's a significant amount of, looks like pretty nice trees and shrubbery being proposed here. And this may take what, 20 years, who knows, to build. How do we handle all that? When does that happen?
So the short answer is that the security will be held until all of the improvements are completed. What I would recommend is that whatever security is ultimately in place, that we propose a phased return of security, whatever form that takes, or a phased development agreement, although that's a little more challenging. But I think that we can agree to something that provides flexibility for the developer to either have funds returned to them on a stepped basis, or offers them some level of review or some level of approval moving forward if it really truly does take years for the project to be completed.
I think given the nature of the project, we might want to be thinking about flexibility rather than a construction agreement with a security proposal right up front. But I'm just concerned about the board's liability, the board's additional burden of work going forward if we go for the alternative proposal that you have made.
And just for clarification, in the event that the applicant seeks a development agreement, the planning board ultimately has to approve that agreement. So it would have to come to you before any work can take place.
And does that significantly increase our workload?
No, it does not. You signed one for the Calden Farm / Watertown Village development I believe about a year and a half ago, one that I drafted with Laura Spector Morgan. And it was, quite frankly, it was a 10-minute agenda item.
Okay, very good. Then I would have no difficulty with that condition. All right, so we have the application presented, moved, and we have 18 total conditions for approval. I'd be happy to move this application to acceptance with the conditions enumerated by the planner, numbers 1 through 18. Do I hear a second to that motion?
Seconded.
Matt, would you call a roll call vote for approval, please?
Be happy to. Mike Hodder?
Yes.
Von Dugan?
Aye.
Susan Replier?
Yes.
Peter Goodwin?
Yes.
And Paul O'Brien?
Yes.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to point out a procedural issue that Leanne actually informed me of. On the subdivision application, the board failed to accept the application as complete. You actually voted on the waiver without a completeness vote. So my request would be that you simply revisit that right now, take the vote on completeness, and reaffirm the decision that was made by the board, if you would, please.
Thank Leanne, please, for her diligence in catching that.
And I apologize. I'm a little caught up in the format, and I missed that. I apologize for that.
That's all right, and I'm new at this job, so I apologize also. I'm going to reopen. Should I reopen the case?
Yes, please.
All right, I'm going to reopen case number 2020-12, tax map 176-020-001. Consideration of application for subdivision review, applicant Eastern Lakes Region Housing Coalition Incorporated. This application has already been moved to be complete and voted on accordingly. Is that correct or not?
No, you have granted the waiver, but you have not voted on the completeness of the application. So please do that now.
It's late for me. The application waiver has been accepted and voted on. In favor, I'd now like to entertain a motion to accept this.
So moved.
Moved by Vaughn, seconded by Peter. I have a roll call vote in favor.
Mike?
Yes.
Vaughn?
Aye.
Peter?
Yes.
Susan?
Yes.
And Paul?
All right, thank you all. The application is complete as presented.
Mr. Chairman, if you could, please quickly open the public hearing one more time.
Open the public hearing on the subdivision application. In comment, close the public hearing on the application. Now, do I need to move a vote of approval again?
Yes, please. I apologize for the inconvenience.
I'll be happy to Thank you.
And
With
that-
conditions as originally
And that vote
presented.
includes the condition as recommended by the planner, correct?
So moves. It includes the conditions.
Seconded by me. All in favor? Roll call vote, please, Matt.
Mike,
Yes.
Vaughn, Peter,
Yes.
Susan,
Yes.
and Paul.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Application is approved.
Leanne, if you could turn your mic off, your feedback is pretty tough.
Of course. Okay,
Thank you.
we all set to move on to the next one.
Yes, please.
Mike, thank you
Thank you
very
all.
much, and Paul O'Brien, thank you very much for sitting in for Brad.
It was great fun. Have a good night, everybody. See you later.
Okay, all right, good to see you. Okay, the next application, Adam and Jacqueline Lauren, Springfield Point Road, tax map and lot 266-4-1, case 2020-16. This is a subdivision application for 6-lot conservation open space subdivision. The applicant, you're on. Who is the?
Mike, are you able to join? Are you on okay?
I should, am I on? Can you see me or?
No, Mike, your camera is not turned on.
How's that? Now, can you see me now?
Nope.
Or? Oh,
No,
hold
we're
on.
still not getting you, Mike.
Over, Mike.
There
There
we
you
go.
go.
Yeah.
Okay. There you are.
Thanks for taking some extra time out of your night tonight. I know it's past your normal adjournment time. My name is Mike Garapi. I'm with Garapi Planning Consultants, representing Adam and Jackie Lauren, who have a purchase and sale agreement on this property, which is off of Springfield Point Road, and it is known as tax map 266 lot 4-1 and consists of about 51 acres. Matt, did you want me to go into a presentation now, or do you have some comments prior to?
No, you go ahead with your presentation, please.
Fantastic. So I see the plans are up in front of you folks now. Matt's controlling the screen. I just want to give a brief overview of the project and then open it up to questions and answers. I will say that with me this evening is Adam and Jacqueline, Jackie, Lauren. They're on the meeting. I also have Scott Frankowitz with New Hampshire Land Consultants in attendance. He's the surveyor of record, and Christopher Bolt with DTC Lawyers representing us as well. As I said, it's tax map 266 lot 4-1. It is 51 acres of undeveloped land. The parcel is located in the general residential district and also partly in the shorefront district with frontage both on Springfield Point Road and Lake Winnipesaukee. The intent here is to create a conservation subdivision with 5 building lots and 1 open space lot. The lots range in size, the building lots rather range in size from 1.3 acres to 3.5 acres. And the open space lot is approximately 41 acres, which represents 80% open space for the total tract. Only lot 4-2 is intended to have direct water frontage on Lake Winnipesaukee. The entire property will be subject to a 100-foot perimeter buffer, which is primarily intended to be maintained as open space. A portion of that buffer, that perimeter buffer, is proposed to be limited use open space to allow for shared access drives to the building lots themselves. Lots 4-2 and 4-3, they'll be accessed via a shared driveway that primarily utilizes an existing trail / woods road on the property. And lots 4-4, 4-5, and 4-6 are proposed to be accessed via a shared driveway that utilizes a similar existing trail, woods road on the property. The entirety of the shorefront will be protected by a 100-foot shorefront buffer as well. A portion of that shorefront buffer is proposed to be active open space per your ordinance. And that active open space is proposed to be utilized for shorefront related activities such as docks, boathouses, perch beaches, boat ramps, etc. Things that are in conformance with both New Hampshire DES and the town shoreline requirements in the 0 to 50 section of that 100-foot buffer. And then other uses in the 50 to 100-foot buffer will be uses such as landscape and hardscape. The plan you see in front of you, I think, shows the overview of the lots themselves, the building lots themselves. I think it's the next sheet, Matt, if you're driving, has several lot calculations required by the ordinance. If you go to the overview, open space sheet, Matt, we can see sort of the entirety of the open space itself. Should be
Mike, is that sheet one that you're looking for?
Sheet 3 is probably fine to show, Matt, just to show the entirety of the property, showing all the different types of uses and buffers.
Okay.
This gives a pretty good visual of the whole property. So the open space required under the ordinance is 50%, and this project proposes 80% open space. You can see that the large majority is proposed to be protected by under an open space provision. It's going to be its own lot, proposed as Lot 4-1, and the open space is proposed to be protected in perpetuity by a conservation deed restriction, and no further subdivision is proposed with this project. We are requesting 3 waivers to your regulations for full boundary survey, topographic survey, and soils mapping. Complete survey was conducted for the proposed development area as shown on the plan, and that's shown on sheet 2 of 10, Matt. We'll show the limits of survey, complete survey. So we conducted complete topographic, wetland, and boundary survey for the area that you see in the hatched area. Correct. Yeah, where Matt's outlining. We provide on subsequent plan sheets the remaining details. The boundary, we're tying into the previous boundary survey for the remainder of the boundary. We're utilizing LiDAR topography and county soils information for the remainder of the parcel, which will be comprised of the open space. So we're requesting the waiver from complete survey information for the balance of the open space lot. And that is really all I have in a nutshell, just as a quick overview. I find it more effective to open it up for questions from the board and from abutters, if any.
Okay, all right. Thank you. Board members, do you have any questions? Matt, do you have additional comments?
No, I may be inappropriate, but I want to thank the applicant for their patience as I sort of navigated my first experience with the conservation subdivision ordinance here in town. Mike and his team were certainly patient on this, but ultimately I actually think this is a perfect proposal under the conservation subdivision ordinance. I think it's not only produces some viable building lots, but also preserves a large portion of what will be protected by conservation deed restriction property that is contiguous to existing conservation land, which I really think is what this ordinance was intended to do. I did review the ordinance in detail within my planner review. I won't go through each provision of that, but I'm happy to answer any questions. I just wanted to note that the reason for the odd driveway configuration here is that the zoning ordinance has a restriction of a maximum of 3 dwelling units to be accessed off of one driveway. Therefore, in addition to a wetland issue that did exist That's the reason for the two convening sort of driveways that are proposed on the subdivision plan, if you were curious about that. I just actually noticed one typo that I wanted to clarify for the record. I'd indicated that the applicant had not provided form factor calculations within the plan set, but in fact they had within the detail sheet on sheet 4. I found that detail sheet very, very helpful, so I want to thank the applicant for that. Beyond that, I do feel the application is complete with the exception of the 3 waivers as requested. Certainly do think those are acceptable waivers based on the size of the parcel and the conveyance of that remaining open space land as part of the deed restriction process. The last comment is that the deed restriction has been under review by town council. We've had favorable review, I would say. We are in the last steps of landing that plane right now. We had some calls between town council, myself, and Mr. Bolt, or Attorney Bolt, who's on the call today. And we feel that we're headed in the right direction. So I am recommending a condition of approval be that the deed restrictions be favorably reviewed and recorded by council.
Okay. All right, Mike?
Yeah, Madam Chairman, that was my only concern. I noticed in the planner's review that there were a number of occasions where he mentioned the town council review had not been finalized as yet. And if Matt's going to make this part of as a condition of approval, then I can go along with that.
Okay, all right, thank you. Well, it seems that the applicant and actually Matt has also justified the granting of the waivers that were requested. So I'll make a motion to grant the 3 waivers.
I'll second that.
And motion has been made and seconded. Roll call vote to grant the waivers. Von Dugan?
Yes.
Susan?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Mike?
Yes.
Peter?
Yes.
Okay, Brad?
Yes.
Okay, and I'll vote in favor of granting the waivers. Okay, so the waivers have been granted, and that makes the application complete. And I'll make the motion to accept the application as complete. If somebody would second it.
I'll second that.
Okay, thank you. Roll call again. Van Dugan?
Aye.
Susan Replier?
Yes.
Mike Cotter?
Yes.
Peter Goodwin?
Yes.
Brad Harriman?
Yes.
Oh, okay, and I also vote in favor of accepting the application as complete. Okay, I'll open the public hearing. Is there any member of the public that's connected to us that would like to comment on this application? We did receive a email from a neighborhood representative who had talked to many of the neighbors in the area, and they're all seem to be in favor of this application as a very positive contribution to their neighborhood. So I don't see anyone coming forward. So Matt, did you have some conditions that we should consider?
Can I ask a
Be
question?
happy to.
Oh, I'm sorry. Excuse me. Yes, please do.
Right now, they're showing 2 driveways, one shared by 2, one shared by 3. Is there anything that precludes individuals from putting their own driveway on their own lot?
No. Oh, I'm sorry. You're asking the applicant if there's any. Yeah, I'm sorry, Mike. You may want to address that. I'm sorry, I jumped in there.
Well, yeah, either you or I, Matt, but the ordinance for the conservation subdivision ordinance requires that the access to the lots be off of a shared access way. So that's one of the reasons why we proposed to do this. But it also, we felt it was just a more efficient way to access those lots off of Springfield Point Road with less curb cuts.
And I have recommended a condition of approval be the access agreements at least be mocked in order to gain access over or have easement access over the proposed lots, because that will be necessary should the properties be conveyed in the future.
Madam Chairman, we should close the public hearing.
Well, yes, I like to get the conditions in when the public hearing is open. Have planning board, any of you have any more questions? Okay, Matt, would you please go over any conditions that you want us to consider?
I'd be happy to. Condition number 1, the incorporation of the plans as presented and dated to this approval. Those are plans 1 through 10 related to the subdivision application. Condition 2, the applicant shall be responsible for submitting a Mylar plan for recording at the Carroll County Registry of Deeds. The applicant shall be responsible for the payment of all recording fees. Condition 4, the applicant shall provide a copy of NHDES subdivision approval. Condition 5, proposed access agreements or access easements rather for shared driveway access shall be prepared, favorably reviewed by town council at the cost of the applicant, and recorded, if necessary, at the Carroll County Registry of Deeds. All land conservation easement and deed language shall be favorably reviewed by town council to ensure that environmentally sensitive areas are dedicated as conservation open space, and that proposed lot 266004001 is permanently protected as open space in accordance with the ordinance. All the documentation submitted within the application package is obviously incorporated as part of the approval. Condition number 8, if granted, which they have been granted, the applicant shall add notes to the final recorded plans indicating the waivers that were granted by the board. And condition number 9, the applicant shall be responsible for the submission of a certificate of monumentation representing that the final plans have been monumented in the field. And those are conditions 1 through 9.
Okay, thank you. Planning board members, did you want to add any other conditions, or are you comfortable with those?
It's a good application.
Okay, I'll close the public hearing and entertain a motion to approve this application.
So moved.
Thank you. Motion has been made and seconded. Okay, here we go. Roll call vote. Von Dugan, are you in favor of the application?
Aye.
Susan?
In favor.
Mike?
Yes.
Peter?
Yes.
Brad?
Yes.
And I will vote in favor of the application. Thank you very much, folks. It's a good application, and thanks for your presentation.
And your patience.
Thank you
so
so
much. Very
much.
much for all you're saying. Appreciate it greatly, folks.
All right. Okay.
Have a great night. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, the last item, well, next to last item, Lakes Region Model Railroad Museum, 61 Railroad Avenue, tax map and lot 217-46, case 2020-15. This is a site plan review for museum use. The application was not complete as of today, and so we'd like to continue this until June 2nd, 2020. And I'll make a motion to continue the application. Somebody would second it.
Seconded.
Okay.
And is that 7 p.m.? 7 p.m., Kathy?
At 7 p.m. and
Okay.
by go to meeting.
Yep, correct.
Okay, roll call, all in favor of continuing this application until June 2nd. Vaughn?
Aye.
Susan?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Peter?
Yes.
Brad?
Yes.
And I am in favor of continuing the application. Comment? Don't think there's anyone around to make a public comment. Any other business? None. Approval of the minutes. Does anyone have any issues with the April 21st, 2020 minutes?
I have one change.
Okay.
Page 4. Paragraph that starts with me talking.
Okay.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8th line down at the end. It reads, he stated. Change the word stated to questioned.
Okay. Anything else? Okay, I'll make a motion to accept the minutes as amended. Somebody want to second it?
Seconded.
Thank you. Okay, roll call vote to approve the minutes. Vaughn?
Aye.
Susan?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Peter?
Yes.
Brad?
Yes.
And I'll vote in favor. Okay, anybody have anything else? Thank you all. This very long evening, so.
I know. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, everyone. It took a long time.
Yes, yes, it did, but we got through everything. Okay, so to adjourn the meeting, I need to have a roll call vote. Von Dugan, are you in favor of adjourning the meeting?
Very.
Okay. Susan?
In favor.
Okay. Mike?
Ditto Vaughn.
Peter?
Yes.
Brad?
Yes.
I'm in favor. All right, everyone. Have a wonderful rest of the evening.
Oh, yeah, straight to bed.
But none of us have to drive home.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Leanne. Yeah.
I do. I do.
You do. Oh, you're in the town office.
I am. Yeah. Have a good night, everybody.
All right.
Good night.
Couple weeks.
Bye.
All right.